Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1, I was repainting the spare room when I felt it, an odd hollow beneath the drywall near the baseboard. The brush stopped mid-stroke as my knuckles rapped against the surface, definitely not solid. The sound echoed back wrong, like knocking on an empty coffin. I cut into the plaster with my utility knife, expecting to find pipes or old insulation. Instead, I pulled out a small wooden box wrapped in yellowed plastic. Inside were Polaroids, grainy, water-damaged, and horribly specific. Each one was labeled in smudged red ink with dates spanning decades. I didn't recognize the faces staring back at me, but the background in every photo was unmistakably mine. My kitchen, my living room, my bedroom window. The previous owner had been an elderly woman who lived here alone for 40 years. She died in the house, they told me when I signed the papers. Natural causes, the realtor assured me with that practiced smile. But these photos predated her death by years, some by decades. I spread them across my dining table, trying to make sense of the timeline. Young faces, middle-aged faces, elderly faces, all taken in rooms I now called home. All with that same expression, not quite fear, not quite surprise, something closer to resignation. The red ink labels weren't dates, they were names or maybe codes. Each photo had a different marking, but the handwriting was consistent, deliberate. Someone had been very organized about this collection. I found myself studying the backgrounds more than the subjects. That crack in the kitchen wall had been there in photos from 20 years ago. The same loose floorboard in the hallway. The previous owner hadn't changed much over the decades, but she had been documenting something, or someone had been documenting for her. The basement called to me that evening. I'd avoided it since moving in, something about the musty smell and the way shadows seemed to pool in corners even with all the lights on. Now I descended those creaking steps with purpose, flashlight in hand, despite the overhead bulbs. Behind the furnace, more boxes, larger ones. Inside, I found journals written in the same careful handwriting as the photo labels, page after page of observations, arrival patterns, behavioral notes, physical descriptions that matched the Polaroid subjects perfectly. The entries read like field research, clinical, detached. Subject shows increased agitation when approached from the left side. Responds well to classical music during evening hours. Prefers tea over coffee, sugar but no cream. I recognized some of these preferences. They were mine. The final journal entry was dated just weeks before the previous owner's death. New subject shows promise, displays same markers as previous candidates, preparation phase beginning soon. My hands shook as I read those words. The photos upstairs suddenly made terrible sense. Every person in those Polaroids had lived in this house, had been observed, documented, studied. And then what? I called the realtor that night, demanding information about previous tenants. She seemed confused by my questions. According to her records, the elderly woman had been the only owner for 4 decades. No renters, no other residents. But there are dozens of photos, I insisted. Different people, different time periods. Her silence stretched uncomfortably before she spoke again. Are you sure about what you're seeing? Sometimes old houses can play tricks on the mind. Stress from moving, isolation, lack of sleep. I hung up and returned to the photos. Under my desk lamp, I examined them more carefully. The faces were distinct, definitely different people, but something nagged at me about their placement in the rooms. The angles seemed wrong somehow, too perfect, too deliberate. I measured the distance from where each photo was taken to its subject, exactly 8 feet in every case, the same height, the same perspective, as if someone had stood in the exact same spot each time, year after year. The morning brought a knock at my door, a woman in her 50s, well-dressed but nervous. She introduced herself as the previous owner's niece and asked if she could walk through the house one final time. For closure, she said. I let her in, watching as she moved through the rooms with unsettling familiarity. She paused in each doorway, her eyes scanning not the furniture or walls, but specific spots on the floor. The exact spots where the photo subjects had stood. She was a researcher, the niece explained when she noticed my stare. Studied human behavior, spent decades documenting social interactions and domestic patterns. What kind of research required photos? Her smile didn't reach her eyes, the kind that required volunteers who didn't know they were volunteering. She left without saying goodbye, but not before running her fingers along the baseboard where I'd found the box. The same hollow spot I'd discovered by accident, or what I'd thought was accident. That evening I found myself standing in the exact positions from the photos, 8 feet from the kitchen counter, 8 feet from the living room window, 8 feet from my bedroom door. Each spot offered a perfect view, an ideal angle for observation. I started checking the walls more systematically, more hollows, more boxes, decades of documentation hidden throughout the house like a macabre time capsule. Some photos showed the same faces across multiple years, aging naturally. Others showed faces I'd only seen once, never to appear again. The final box I found contained something different: modern equipment, digital cameras with telephoto lenses, audio recording devices, motion sensors, all brand new, still in their packaging. A note was tucked beneath the equipment in that same careful handwriting. For the next phase, technology improves, but the research continues. The new subject shows exceptional promise. I understood then why the previous owner had died in this house, why she'd never moved, why the realtor had been so eager to sell quickly and quietly. The research wasn't finished, it was just changing hands. The photos weren't documentation of past subjects, they were a template, a guide for whoever came next, instructions for continuing 4 decades of careful observation. I packed that night, but something stopped me at the door. In the morning light streaming through the windows, I could see dust patterns on the floors, footprints that weren't mine, fresh ones. Someone had been in the house while I slept. The spare room I'd been repainting now had a fresh coat of primer over the hole I'd cut in the wall. Smooth and white, as if it had never been disturbed, as if the box had never existed. But the photos were still on my dining table, 40 years of subjects staring back at me with that same resigned expression. And now I understood what they'd realized in their final moments of awareness. The house hadn't been choosing its residents, someone else had been choosing for it. I left the photos where they were and walked out the front door. But even now, writing this from a hotel room across town, I can't shake the feeling that my departure was observed, documented, filed away as part of the ongoing research. And I wonder about the next person who will answer that real estate listing, the one that emphasizes privacy and isolation, the one that mentions the house's fascinating history without going into specifics. I wonder if they'll notice the hollow sound behind the walls, and whether they'll have the wisdom to leave it undisturbed. Crime 2, the coffee cup left a ring on the wooden table, perfectly circular, like the kind of stain that never comes out no matter how hard you scrub. I stared at it while the detective across from me shuffled through photographs, each one making a soft whisper against the others. The fluorescent light above us hummed with that persistent electric buzz that gets under your skin after a while. "Tell me again about the last time you saw her," he said, not looking up from the stack of papers. I wrapped my fingers around the cup's handle, feeling the ceramic's warmth seep through my skin. The coffee had gone cold, but I held on anyway. She was folding laundry in the living room. The television was on, some cooking show. She always watched those shows, even though she never cooked anything complicated. The detective's pen scratched against his notepad. Outside, rain began to tap against the window, each drop creating its own rhythm. I found myself counting the seconds between each tap, losing track somewhere around 17. What was she wearing? A blue sweater, the one with the small hole near the left elbow. She kept saying she'd fix it, but she never did. I paused, remembering how she'd tug at that loose thread whenever she was nervous. She was always folding things, towels, sheets, even socks that didn't need folding. The detective finally looked up. His eyes were the color of old pennies, and they studied my face with the kind of intensity that made me want to look away. "Did you argue that morning?" "We never argued, not really. Sometimes we disagree about small things, like whether to buy the name brand cereal or the generic kind, but we never raised our voices." That was true mostly. We developed this way of disagreeing that involved long silences and careful word choices. She'd say something like, "I suppose that's one way to look at it," and I'd know she thought I was wrong. I'd respond with "whatever you think is best," and she'd understand that I was letting her win. The detective made another note, "Walk me through the rest of that day." I closed my eyes, trying to reconstruct those final hours. I went to the hardware store. The kitchen faucet had been dripping for weeks, and she kept leaving post-it notes next to the sink. Little yellow squares with just the word "drip" written in her careful handwriting. "How long were you gone?" "Maybe 2 hours. The store was crowded, and I had to wait for someone to help me find the right washers. When I got back, she wasn't in the living room anymore. The laundry basket was still there, half empty. A pair of jeans hung over the back of the chair, like she'd been interrupted in the middle of folding them." The detective's pen stopped moving. "What did you do then?" I called her name, no answer. I checked the bedroom, the bathroom, even the basement. Her purse was still on the kitchen counter, keys in the little ceramic bowl by the door, the one she made in that pottery class she took 3 summers ago. I opened my eyes and looked at the detective. He was watching me with that same steady gaze, waiting for something. I wasn't sure what. "I fixed the faucet," I continued. "It seemed like the right thing to do. She'd been asking for weeks, and I finally had the parts. It took about 20 minutes, and when I finished, the silence felt different, complete." "Complete how?" "Before, there was always some kind of sound. Her humming, the television, the drip of the faucet. But after I fixed it, there was nothing. Just this heavy quiet that seemed to press against my ears." The detective flipped through his notes, stopping at a page near the back. The neighbors said they heard arguing around midday, raised voices, maybe a door slamming. "That must have been someone else. I told you we didn't argue." Mrs. Patterson next door was very specific. She said she heard a woman's voice, then a man's voice, then nothing. I thought about Mrs. Patterson with her carefully tended garden and her habit of collecting the mail in her bathrobe. She'd lived next door for 15 years, and I'd never heard her say more than a few words at a time. Now, apparently, she was a key witness. People hear what they expect to hear, I said. Mrs. Patterson watches too many crime shows. She probably heard a television program and thought it was real. The detective made another note, his pen pressing harder against the paper. We found something interesting in your basement, under the workbench. My stomach tightened, but I kept my voice steady. What kind of something? A shovel recently used, still had dirt on the blade. I've been working in the garden, planting bulbs for spring. She always loved tulips, said they reminded her of new beginnings. In October. You plant tulip bulbs in fall if you want them to bloom in spring. Everyone knows that. I paused, realizing how defensive I sounded. She marked it on the calendar, a red circle around the date with tulips written in the margin. The detective studied me for a long moment. We also found her wedding ring in the kitchen drawer. Seems odd that she'd take it off. She took it off when she did dishes. The soap made it slippery, and she was always afraid it would fall down the drain. But the dishes were clean, already put away. I thought about this, trying to remember. The kitchen had been spotless when I returned from the hardware store. She was meticulous about cleaning, always wiping down surfaces twice to make sure they were really clean. Maybe she was going to do more dishes later. She liked to keep the ring somewhere safe. The detective closed his notepad and leaned back in his chair. Where do you think she went? I don't know, that's why I called you. But you must have some idea. People don't just vanish. I looked at the coffee ring on the table again. It had already started to darken the wood, creating a permanent mark that would outlast both of us. She talked sometimes about her sister. They hadn't spoken in years, but she'd mention her when she thought I wasn't listening. Maybe she went there. We checked. The sister hasn't heard from her in over a decade. Then I don't know. The detective gathered his photographs and slipped them back into a manila folder. We'll keep looking, but I have to tell you, after 72 hours, the chances of finding someone alive start to decrease significantly. She's not dead. How can you be so sure? I stood up, feeling the weight of the silence pressing down on me again, because I'd know, when you live with someone for that long, you develop a connection. I'd feel it if something happened to her. The detective stood too, extending his hand. His grip was firm, but his eyes remained skeptical. We'll be in touch. After he left, I sat alone in the kitchen, listening to the perfect silence of the house. No dripping faucet, no humming, no television voices. Just the sound of my own breathing and the occasional creak of the floorboards settling. I walked to the window and looked out at the backyard. The tulip bulbs were planted in neat rows, each one exactly 6 inches apart, just like the instructions on the package. Come spring, they'd bloom in brilliant colors, creating a garden that would be admired by anyone who saw it. But she'd never see them bloom. I knew this with the same certainty that I knew the faucet would never drip again, that the laundry would stay folded, that the coffee cup would leave permanent rings on every surface it touched. The truth was simpler than the detective imagined, and more complicated than I could ever explain. She hadn't left. She'd never leave. She was still here, in the silence between the words we'd never said, in the space between the accusations we'd never made. I picked up the coffee cup and carried it to the sink. running water over the ceramic until it was perfectly clean. Then I dried it with one of her carefully folded towels and put it back in the cabinet, in the exact spot where it belonged. The silence felt complete now, the way it was meant to be. Perfect and permanent, like the tulips that would bloom in spring, like the wedding ring that would stay safe in its drawer, like the love that would never need to be questioned or explained. Outside, the rain continued to fall, each drop adding to the soft earth where new things would grow. Crime 3, I was replacing the medicine cabinet in the guest bathroom when I noticed the mirror frame wasn't flush against the wall. The screws had loosened over the years, creating a gap just wide enough for my fingers to slide behind the glass. What I found there changed everything I thought I knew about the house I'd called home for nearly a decade. Behind the mirror wasn't drywall, it was a window. And through that window was another room, one that didn't belong to my house. The space looked lived in, with a narrow cot pushed against the far wall, a heavy coat hanging from a metal hook, and most disturbing of all, a camera mounted on a tripod pointed directly at where the mirror had been. Its red recording light blinked steadily in the dim light. My hands trembled as I pressed the mirror back into place, my mind racing through possibilities that made less sense the more I considered them. I'd bought this house from an elderly woman whose husband had passed away. She'd seemed eager to sell, accepting my offer without negotiation. The sale had been quick, almost suspiciously so, but I'd been grateful then. Now I wondered what she'd been hiding. The next few days passed in a haze of normalcy that felt forced. I went to work, came home, cooked dinner, watched television. But every time I walked past the guest bathroom, I felt the weight of that hidden room pressing against the wall. The mirror seemed to watch me now, reflecting my face with an expression I barely recognized, hollow-eyed and paranoid. I began researching the property records, digging through city archives and old newspaper clippings. The previous owner's husband had been a contractor, specializing in home renovations. He'd worked on dozens of houses in the neighborhood, always alone, always meticulous about his modifications. Several homeowners mentioned how he'd insisted on handling certain projects personally, particularly anything involving mirrors or bathroom installations. 3 houses down from mine, I met a woman who'd had her guest bathroom renovated by him. She invited me inside, and when I asked to see his work, her face darkened. She led me to a bathroom nearly identical to mine, with the same medicine cabinet, the same mirror placement. When she touched the frame, it shifted slightly, just as mine had. We looked at each other without speaking, both understanding what needed to happen next. Together, we pried the mirror away from the wall. Behind it was another window, another hidden room. This one was empty except for mounting brackets on the wall where a camera had once been positioned. Fresh scratches on the floor suggested equipment had been removed recently. The woman's voice was barely a whisper as she asked how many other houses he'd modified, how many other families had unknowingly lived under surveillance, how many private moments had been recorded and stored somewhere we couldn't imagine. I started visiting other houses in the neighborhood where he'd worked, always with a plausible excuse, checking on old repairs, asking about his craftsmanship for my own reference. Most owners were happy to show me his renovations, and in nearly every guest bathroom I found the same slightly loose mirror, the same hidden window, the same evidence of careful observation. The pattern was methodical, professional. He'd positioned these observation points in rooms where people felt most vulnerable, bathrooms, changing areas, spaces where privacy was assumed. The cameras were small, nearly invisible, with wireless capabilities that would have allowed remote monitoring from anywhere. I contacted the authorities, but the investigation stalled quickly. The man had died 2 years before I'd discovered the hidden room. His widow claimed ignorance about his activities, though her hasty sale of the house suggested otherwise. Without concrete evidence of criminal activity, the cameras were gone, the recordings were nowhere to be found, there was little they could pursue legally. The other homeowners and I formed an unlikely support group, meeting weekly to share our discoveries and our mounting paranoia. We'd all found evidence of the surveillance system, but we'd also found something else, gaps in our memories, moments we couldn't quite recall clearly, instances where we'd felt watched but dismissed the feeling as imagination. One evening, while reviewing old security footage from the neighborhood, I noticed something that made my blood freeze. The man's van had been parked outside my house on several occasions when I knew I'd been home alone. The timestamps corresponded with nights I'd experienced unusually vivid dreams, mornings when I'd woken feeling disoriented and violated in ways I couldn't explain. The more we investigated, the more questions arose. How long had this been going on? How many people were involved? Was this simply voyeurism, or had there been a broader purpose to the surveillance? The equipment we'd found suggested a level of sophistication that went beyond casual observation. This was systematic, organized, with clear commercial or blackmail potential. I hired a private investigator who specialized in digital forensics. She found traces of encrypted file transfers from my home's IP address, uploads that had occurred during those same time periods when the van had been present. The files had been sent to servers overseas, beyond the reach of local law enforcement. The investigation revealed a network of similar operations in other cities, all connected by the same encryption signatures and upload patterns. This wasn't an isolated case of a disturbed individual. It was part of something larger, more organized, with financial motivations that extended far beyond our small neighborhood. But the deeper we dug, the more dangerous our situation became. My investigator received anonymous warnings to stop her research. Several of the other homeowners experienced break-ins where nothing was stolen, but personal files were disturbed. We were getting close to something that powerful people wanted to remain hidden. The final piece of evidence came from an unexpected source. The elderly woman who'd sold me the house contacted me, claiming she'd found something in her new apartment that I needed to see. When I arrived, she handed me a small hard drive that her late husband had hidden behind their bedroom mirror, a location she'd only discovered when decorating her new place. The drive contained terabytes of surveillance footage from dozens of houses, including mine. But more disturbing were the financial records showing payments from overseas accounts, subscription services for access to live feeds, and customer lists with hundreds of names. This had been a business, and a profitable one. We were about to take this evidence to federal authorities when the woman died suddenly. The official cause was listed as a heart attack, but she'd been in good health when I'd seen her. Her apartment was cleaned out before family members could collect her belongings, and the hard drive disappeared from the police evidence locker during processing. The investigation went cold. The federal agents assigned to the case were reassigned to other duties. The other homeowners gradually stopped attending our meetings, some claiming they'd received job offers in distant cities, others simply losing interest in pursuing answers that seemed increasingly dangerous to seek. I still live in the house, though I've sealed the hidden window permanently, but sometimes late at night I hear sounds from the space behind the mirror, subtle movements that shouldn't be possible in a room I've verified is empty. The surveillance may have ended, but the feeling of being watched remains. The truth is, I'm not entirely certain we found all the cameras or that the network was completely dismantled. There are too many unanswered questions, too many loose ends that were tied up too neatly by forces beyond our understanding. The case officially doesn't exist. No charges were filed, no public records were created, no justice was served. And sometimes, when I catch my reflection in that guest bathroom mirror, I wonder if somewhere, somehow, someone is still watching. The mirror shows only my face now, but I can never quite shake the feeling that it's showing something else entirely to someone else. The wrong room, perhaps, or maybe the right one. Crime 4, I still remember the smell of dust and old paper when I first opened that filing cabinet. The metallic tang of the keys as they turned in the lock, the way the drawer stuck for a moment before sliding open with a reluctant groan. Inside, manila folders arranged with obsessive precision, each one labeled in careful handwriting that would become as familiar to me as my own. The case had been closed for years, officially. Everyone had moved on, but something about those files kept drawing me back, the way a tongue finds a loose tooth. I was supposed to be reviewing cold cases for administrative purposes, nothing more. Just checking that everything was properly documented before transfer to long-term storage, routine work that nobody else wanted to do. The first thing I noticed was how clean the crime scene photos looked. Too clean. The victim's apartment appeared almost staged, like someone had arranged everything just so before the photographer arrived. A coffee cup sat perfectly centered on the kitchen table, still containing liquid that should have evaporated days before discovery. The victim's shoes were aligned by the door with military precision, laces tucked inside in a way that suggested deliberate placement rather than casual removal. I pulled out my magnifying glass and studied each photograph carefully. In one corner of the living room, a bookshelf caught my attention. The books were sorted by height rather than subject or author, creating an unnatural gradient that made my skin crawl. Who organizes books that way? Certainly not someone who actually reads them. The interview transcripts told a different story than the initial report suggested. The neighbor who found the body had changed his account 3 times during questioning, each version containing subtle variations that the investigating officers had apparently missed or chosen to ignore. First, he claimed to have smelled something unusual coming from the apartment. Then he said he heard sounds. Finally, he insisted he had simply decided to check on his neighbor out of concern. I made notes in the margins, connecting contradictions with thin pencil lines that began to form a web across the pages. The more I read, the more questions emerged. Why had the investigation been closed so quickly? Why were certain potential witnesses never interviewed? And why did the lead detective's notes contain gaps during crucial periods of the investigation? The evidence room visit changed everything. I had requested to examine the physical items collected from the scene, expecting to find the usual collection of bagged and tagged materials. Instead, I discovered that several key pieces of evidence were missing. Not lost, not misfiled, but deliberately removed according to the checkout log. The signature on the removal form was illegible, and the authorization code led to a personnel file that no longer existed. I began making phone calls to people connected to the case. The victim's family members, former colleagues, anyone who might remember something useful. Most conversations led nowhere, but one call stood out. The victim's former business partner answered on the first ring, as if he had been expecting my call for years. His voice carried a weight that made my hands shake as I took notes. He spoke carefully, choosing each word with precision that suggested long practice. He mentioned meetings that weren't in any official record, payments that couldn't be traced, and decisions that had been made by people whose names never appeared in the case file. When I asked directly about the victim's state of mind before death, he paused for so long I thought the connection had been lost. "Some people know too much," he finally said, and some people ask too many questions. The line went dead before I could respond. I returned to the evidence room the next day, determined to document everything that remained. The custodian, an elderly man with calloused hands and tired eyes, watched me work with an expression I couldn't read. When I mentioned the missing items, he nodded slowly and disappeared into the back storage area. He returned carrying a box that wasn't listed in any inventory I had seen. Inside were photographs that had never been included in the official file, showing the crime scene from angles that revealed details the investigating team had apparently overlooked. In one image, I could see reflection in a mirror that showed someone standing just outside the camera's range. The figure was blurry, but the outline was distinctly human. "These got separated somehow," the custodian said, avoiding my eyes. "Been meaning to refile them properly." The photographs painted a completely different picture of what had happened. The victim's apartment showed signs of a struggle that had been carefully cleaned up before the official photography began. Furniture had been moved, surfaces wiped down, and personal items rearranged. Someone had spent considerable time and effort making the scene appear orderly and natural. I spent the following days cross-referencing the new evidence with the original investigation files. The timeline didn't match. The witness statements contained coached language that suggested preparation. Even the coroner's report had been amended multiple times, with changes that altered the apparent cause and manner of death. The investigating detective had retired shortly after closing the case, moving to another state with his family. I found his contact information and called, introducing myself as a researcher reviewing old files. His response was immediate and defensive. "That case was solved," he said, his voice tight with something that might have been fear. "The victim died by suicide. The evidence was clear." But the photos I had found showed no evidence of suicide. The victim's hands showed defensive wounds that had been explained away as self-inflicted injuries. The positioning of the body was inconsistent with the official cause of death, and the timing of the discovery didn't align with the established timeline. I realized I was looking at a cover-up, not a solved case. Someone with significant influence had ensured that the investigation was closed quickly and quietly, with minimal scrutiny of the evidence. The victim had died under circumstances that someone powerful wanted hidden. The question that haunted my sleep was simple: who had that kind of influence? And more importantly, were they still in a position to make problems disappear? I made copies of everything, storing them in multiple secure locations. The original files went back to their proper places, but the truth was now documented and preserved. I wrote detailed reports outlining the discrepancies and evidence of tampering, creating a complete record of what I had discovered. But I never submitted those reports. Because the day I finished writing them, I found a note tucked under my windshield wiper, just a few words written in the same careful handwriting I had seen on those manila folders. Some investigations should stay closed. I still have those reports. They sit in a safety deposit box, along with copies of all the evidence I discovered. Sometimes I wonder if I should have pursued the truth regardless of the consequences. Other times I'm grateful for the warning. The case remains officially closed. The victim's death is still listed as suicide in all records, and somewhere, someone who orchestrated a cover-up continues to live freely, protected by silence and fear. I never returned to that filing cabinet. I requested transfer to a different department, away from cold cases and old secrets. but I can't escape the knowledge of what I found or the certainty that justice was never served. The truth is out there, documented and preserved, waiting for someone braver than I was to bring it to light, someone who won't be deterred by anonymous warnings or the weight of powerful enemies. Someone who believes that the dead deserve justice, even when the living prefer silence. Crime 5, the access hatch barely opened. I climbed up expecting a cramped crawl space, but instead found a full room, long, cold, windowless. The insulation was torn apart like something had nested there. In one corner I found a cot. Next to it, empty food cans and a spiral notebook with lists of dates. All the entries stopped 3 months ago, except the last one. It simply said they moved in. I had inherited this house from my uncle. He'd lived alone for decades, never married, rarely spoke to family. The realtor assured me it was structurally sound, but standing in that hidden room, I felt the weight of something unfinished pressing down on me. The wooden floor creaked under my feet as I picked up the notebook. The handwriting was careful, deliberate. Each entry began with a date, followed by observations. Footsteps above the ceiling, muffled voices through the walls, scratching sounds between the floors. The dates went back 2 years. I flipped through pages filled with meticulous documentation of sounds, movements, disruptions. My uncle had been tracking something or someone. The entries grew more detailed as they progressed, moved furniture in the spare room again, left the faucet running, took food from the pantry. I sat on the dusty cot, trying to make sense of what I was reading. My uncle had believed someone was living in his house without his knowledge. The final entries became increasingly frantic. Found my medication moved, dishes I didn't wash, someone used my computer. The last week showed a man convinced he was being watched, monitored, slowly driven to paranoia. But then the entries stopped abruptly. No explanation, no final revelation, just that last cryptic note, they moved in. I climbed down from the attic and walked through the house with different eyes. In the kitchen, I noticed the coffee maker was plugged in, though I hadn't used it. The bathroom towel hung slightly crooked. Small things easily overlooked, but now they felt deliberate, purposeful. I opened the spare bedroom door and found it exactly as I'd left it, yet something felt wrong. The air smelled different, not stale, but lived in. That evening I called my uncle's only neighbor, an elderly woman who'd lived next door for 40 years. She invited me over for tea, her voice carrying the weight of unspoken knowledge. We sat in her living room, surrounded by family photographs and the smell of lavender. When I mentioned my uncle's final months, her expression grew careful, measured. He came to me several times, she said, stirring her tea slowly. Said he heard voices when he was certain he was alone. Asked if I'd seen anyone going into his house when he wasn't home. I told him I hadn't, but she paused, her spoon clinking against the porcelain. There were times I'd see lights on when I knew he was at the doctor's office. Times I'd hear his television when his car wasn't in the driveway. I pressed her for more details, but she seemed reluctant to continue. Finally, she admitted she'd called the police once, concerned about a possible break-in. The officers found no signs of forced entry, no missing items, nothing to suggest criminal activity. They suggested my uncle might be experiencing age-related confusion. The matter was dropped. But I knew your uncle, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. He was sharp until the end. If he said someone was in his house, someone was in his house. I returned home as dusk settled over the neighborhood. The house felt different now, as if it were holding its breath. I made dinner and tried to focus on normal activities, but my uncle's notebook weighed heavily on my mind. I found myself listening to every creak, every settling sound, wondering if they were as innocent as they seemed. Around midnight I heard it, a soft thud from somewhere above me. I froze, listening. Another sound, like furniture being moved carefully across a floor, but I was on the top floor of the house. There was nothing above me except the attic. I grabbed a flashlight and returned to the access hatch. The hidden room looked exactly as I'd left it, but the notebook was gone. I searched frantically, checking every corner, every shadow. The cot remained, the empty cans were still there, but the documentation of my uncle's final months had vanished. I climbed down, my hands shaking as I secured the hatch. The next morning I found the notebook on my kitchen counter. A new entry had been added in the same careful handwriting. The new owner is asking questions. Below that, a single line, time to relocate. I spent the day reviewing security footage from the house's previous owner, documents the realtor had provided. In the final weeks before my uncle's death, the recordings showed something impossible. My uncle would leave the house, and minutes later, lights would turn on and off in a pattern that suggested someone moving from room to room. But the cameras never captured another person entering or leaving. The timestamp on the final recording showed my uncle returning home the day before he died. He walked to the front door, stopped, and turned back toward the street. For several seconds he stood perfectly still, as if listening to something only he could hear. Then he unlocked the door and went inside. The cameras recorded nothing else. I realized then that my uncle hadn't died of natural causes, as the death certificate claimed. He died of exhaustion, of psychological pressure, of the unbearable knowledge that someone had been sharing his life without his consent. Someone who moved through his space like a ghost, leaving just enough evidence to drive him slowly toward madness. As I write this, I can hear footsteps in the walls around me. Soft, deliberate movements that mirror my own. When I stop typing, the sounds stop. When I resume, they begin again. The notebook reappears each morning with new entries, documenting my habits, my routines, my growing awareness of the presence that has claimed this house as its own. I understand now why my uncle's entries stopped so abruptly. He realized that the watcher had become the watched, that his documentation was being read, analyzed, used to predict his next move. The final entry wasn't a revelation, it was a surrender, an acknowledgement that the house had never truly been his. Tonight I'll pack my belongings and leave, but I know it won't matter. Whoever lived in the shadows of my uncle's life has already chosen their next host. The pattern will continue. The notebook will find its way to another hidden space, and somewhere else, another person will discover they're not as alone as they believed. The attic wasn't supposed to be that big, but some spaces exist beyond the blueprints, beyond the official measurements. Some rooms are built not from wood and nails, but from the accumulated weight of secrets, surveillance, and the terrifying knowledge that we're never truly alone in our most private moments. I'm leaving the notebook behind. Let the next owner find it. Let them read my uncle's careful documentation of a life slowly stolen from him. Let them discover, as I have, that some inheritances come with occupants already included. The house is waiting for its next guardian. The watcher is ready to begin again. Crime 6, the loose board had been bugging me for weeks. Every morning, stepping over it on my way to the kitchen, feeling it give slightly under my weight. The wood was darker than the rest, warped at the edges like it had been wet once. I kept telling myself I'd fix it eventually, but something about it made me uneasy. Maybe it was the way it creaked differently than the others, or how it seemed to shift when no one was walking on it. One morning I couldn't stand it anymore. I yanked it up with more force than necessary. Underneath was a shallow cavity, dusty and dry, carved into the support beam like someone had hollowed it out deliberately. The space was just big enough for what was nestled inside. A backpack old and moldy, its fabric faded to an indeterminate color between green and brown. The zipper was corroded but still functional. I opened it with shaking hands. Children's clothes, small ones, a striped shirt with a cartoon character I didn't recognize, shorts with grass stains that looked permanent, tiny socks with holes in the heels. Everything smelled of dampness and something else I couldn't identify. At the bottom, wrapped in a plastic bag, was a pair of muddy shoes, size 3, and beside them a small voice recorder, the kind reporters used decades ago. I pressed play without thinking. Static filled the room, crackling through the old speaker, then breathing, slow and deliberate. Then a voice whispered, so close to the microphone it distorted slightly. It wasn't supposed to go that far. I dropped the recorder. It clattered on the wooden floor, still playing. More static than footsteps, muffled voices in the background. I picked it up again, rewound it, played it from the beginning. The same words, the same breathing pattern. But this time I caught something else in the background noise, a dog barking, distant but persistent. The previous owner had mentioned a dog when I bought the house, an old retriever that used to dig holes in the backyard. He'd laughed about it, said the yard looked like a minefield some days, but he'd never mentioned children. I searched through the house records again that afternoon. The family before me had lived here for 15 years, a couple in their 60s, no kids, before them another childless couple. I went back further, tracing ownership through courthouse records and old phone directories. Every family, every resident listed in the property history, no children. Yet here were these clothes, these shoes caked with dirt that looked fresh despite the mustiness of everything else. I played the recording again that evening. The quality was poor, but I could make out more details now. The voice was young, maybe a teenager. Male, I thought, though it was hard to tell with the distortion. After it wasn't supposed to go that far, there was a long pause, then rustling like someone moving through brush or leaves. Then another voice, fainter, "Nobody will look here." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the backpack, about the deliberate way the cavity had been carved, about how the loose board had been placed just so to hide the opening. Someone had planned this. Someone had known exactly where to put it and how to conceal it. The next morning I called the previous owner. He sounded surprised to hear from me, said everything was fine with the house, wasn't it? I asked about the floorboards, whether he'd ever noticed any loose ones. He paused for a long time before answering. Said he'd always meant to fix that one board in the living room, but never got around to it. When I asked if he'd ever looked underneath it, he went quiet. "Why would I do that?" he finally said. "Just a loose board happens in old houses." But his voice had changed. There was something careful about it now, measured, like he was choosing each word deliberately. I asked about the dog again, the one that dug holes. He laughed, but it sounded forced. Said the dog had been dead for years, buried somewhere in the back corner of the property. Couldn't remember exactly where. After I hung up, I walked through the house again, looking at everything differently. The living room where I'd found the backpack faced the street. Anyone sitting on the couch could see cars coming and going, could watch the neighborhood. The kitchen window overlooked the backyard where the dog used to dig. I found myself returning to the cavity under the floorboard repeatedly over the next few days. Each time I noticed something new. Scratches in the wood that looked deliberate, like marks counting something. A small stain on one edge that I hadn't seen before. The way the adjoining boards had been carefully fitted to hide the gap. The recording haunted me. I played it obsessively, trying to extract meaning from every sound. There were more voices in the background than I'd initially thought, at least 3, maybe 4, and something that sounded like digging, rhythmic and purposeful. I started asking neighbors about the previous owners, casual questions about what they remembered. Most had liked them well enough. Quiet couple kept to themselves, but one elderly woman mentioned something that made me stop walking. She said they'd always wondered about the visitors they sometimes had late in the evening. Young people, she thought, though she'd never gotten a good look at them. They'd come and go through the back gate, she said. Never stayed long. Always thought it was strange, people that age visiting elderly folks. But then again, maybe they were family. That night I went into the backyard with a flashlight. The previous owner had said the dog was buried back there, but I'd never seen any evidence of a grave. The yard was overgrown now, weeds and volunteer trees taking over what had once been a carefully maintained lawn. But in the far corner, where the fence met the neighbor's property line, the ground looked different, slightly sunken, as if it had been disturbed and settled unevenly. I didn't dig, something stopped me, a feeling I couldn't name. Instead, I stood there in the dark, listening to the sounds of the neighborhood settling into night. Somewhere in the distance, a dog was barking. The next day, I took the voice recorder to a friend who worked in audio production. He cleaned up the recording, filtered out some of the static. What emerged was clearer but more disturbing. The young voice was definitely male, and there was real fear in it. After it wasn't supposed to go that far, I could now hear him say something else. We have to tell someone. But the other voice, the one that said nobody will look here, was older, adult, and strangely familiar, though I couldn't place it. My friend asked where I'd gotten the recording. I told him I'd found it in the house, which was true enough. He raised an eyebrow but didn't press. Instead, he handed me a business card for a detective he knew, someone who specialized in cold cases. I never made that call. Instead, I found myself drawn deeper into the house's history. I discovered that the property had changed hands more frequently than the records initially suggested. There had been gaps, periods where it seemed no one had officially lived there, but someone had maintained it. Utility bills paid by a property management company that no longer existed. Taxes handled by a law firm that had dissolved years ago. The pattern suggested something deliberate, a systematic effort to obscure the property's true history. I started having dreams about the backpack, about small hands packing those clothes, about someone carefully measuring the cavity under the floorboard. In the dreams, I could hear that dog barking, always just out of sight, and voices, multiple voices, talking about things that needed to stay hidden. One morning, I woke to find fresh dirt tracked across my kitchen floor. It led from the back door to the living room, to the spot where the loose board had been. Someone had been in my house during the night, someone who'd walked through the backyard where the ground was soft and muddy from recent rain. I should have called the police then, should have reported the break-in, shown them the backpack, played them the recording, but something held me back. Maybe it was the growing certainty that whatever had happened in this house, whoever those voices belonged to, some of them were still around, still watching. The recording had one more secret to give up. My friend had made a digital copy, and when I played it on my computer, the audio software showed wave patterns I could manipulate. Buried beneath layers of static and background noise was another sound, a phone ringing. Old-fashioned, the kind that used to hang on kitchen walls. I counted the rings, 7, then silence, then the sound of someone picking up, a voice too faint to understand, but definitely there. A conversation happening while someone else was making the recording, trying to document something they were afraid would be forgotten or denied. The last entry in the voice recorder came after what sounded like hours of silence. Just a whisper, so quiet I had to turn the volume all the way up. They're coming back, I'm sorry. Then nothing. I sit here now typing this story, and I can hear that dog barking again. It's been dead for years, according to the previous owner, but every night around the same time I hear it. Always from the backyard, always from the direction of that sunken ground in the corner. The backpack is still under the floorboard. I put it back after that first day, along with everything in it except the voice recorder. That's in my desk drawer now, though I've stopped listening to it. Some secrets are too heavy to carry alone, but too dangerous to share. Sometimes I wonder if I'm the one being recorded now, if somewhere someone else is listening to the sounds of my daily life, waiting for me to say something that reveals too much. The house feels different than it did when I first moved in. It feels like it's watching me, learning my patterns, my weaknesses. And every morning when I walk across that living room floor, I feel the board give slightly under my weight. It's loose again, though I never touched it, as if the house itself is reminding me of what lies beneath, of the choice I made not to dig deeper, not to ask the questions that might have answers I'm not prepared to hear. The truth is still down there, waiting in the dark, but some truths are meant to stay buried, and some mysteries are safer left unsolved. At least, that's what I tell myself when I hear the digging sounds late at night, when I see fresh dirt that shouldn't be there, when I catch glimpses of movement in the backyard where nothing should be moving. The floorboard creaks under my feet, and I keep walking, because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is look too closely at what's hidden in plain sight. Crime 7, I still remember the exact texture of that photograph when I first held it between my fingers. Glossy, slightly bent at the corner, with that familiar chemical smell that old prints carry. The woman in the picture was smiling, but her eyes held something I couldn't place then. Now I know what it was: fear. The photograph came to me through a cardboard box left on my desk after the office was cleared out. She had been my colleague for 3 years, always punctual, always organized. Her disappearance made the local papers for exactly 1 week before other stories pushed it aside. The police had questioned everyone, filed their reports, and eventually moved on to fresher cases. But I couldn't let it go. Her workspace had been meticulously clean, almost sterile. Too clean for someone who lived their life surrounded by case files and coffee-stained documents. I found myself returning to that empty desk, running my hands over the surface, searching for impressions left by her pen, any trace of the last words she might have written. The box contained mostly personal items: a small mirror with a crack running through the center, a tube of lipstick worn down to a nub, and beneath these ordinary objects a stack of receipts held together with a paper clip. At first glance they seemed random gas stations, grocery stores, a few restaurants. But when I spread them across my kitchen table under the harsh fluorescent light, a pattern emerged. Every receipt was from the same general area, a part of town I knew she never visited. The dates created a timeline that stretched back months before her disappearance. Regular visits, always purchasing small items, a pack of gum here, a bottle of water there, never enough to justify the drive, unless she wasn't going there to shop. I drove to that neighborhood myself, following the addresses printed on those thin strips of paper. The area felt different in daylight than I had imagined. Quiet residential streets lined with modest houses, their windows reflecting the afternoon sun like watching eyes. I parked outside the gas station where she had made her most frequent purchases and went inside. The clerk behind the counter was young, maybe 19, with the kind of tired expression that comes from working too many late shifts. When I showed him her photograph, his face changed. Not recognition exactly, but something more complex. He glanced toward the security camera mounted in the corner, then back at me. "She used to come in," he said quietly. "Always seemed nervous, like she was checking over her shoulder." "Did she ever meet anyone here?" He shook his head, but his eyes darted away. Sometimes she would sit in her car for a while after buying something, just sitting there looking at her phone. I thanked him and left, but I could feel his gaze following me through the window. In my car, I sat where she might have sat, staring at the intersection ahead. From this angle, you could see directly into the living room of the house across the street. The curtains were drawn, but there was a gap just wide enough to observe the interior. That house became my obsession. I researched the property records, discovering it had been sold recently to a buyer whose name meant nothing to me. The previous owner had lived there for decades before moving into assisted living, but the timing of the sale aligned perfectly with when she had started making those trips. I began driving by regularly, noting the patterns of life inside, lights turning on and off, shadows moving behind those curtains, a car that sometimes sat in the driveway, sometimes didn't. I told myself I was investigating, but deep down I knew I was becoming someone I didn't recognize. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. While organizing her personal effects to return to her family, I found a small notebook tucked inside the lining of her purse. The pages were filled with numbers, phone numbers, license plates, dates, but also names, not full names, just initials paired with brief descriptions. RM Blue Sedan Tuesdays. LK always carries briefcase. One entry stood out, knows about the basement. I had never heard her mention a basement, but the phrase appeared multiple times throughout the notebook, each instance underlined with increasing pressure, as if she had been growing more agitated with each notation. The house across from the gas station had a basement. I could see the small windows just above ground level, their glass painted black from the inside. During one of my surveillance sessions, I watched someone enter through a side door that led directly below ground level. They carried a large bag and moved with the deliberate care of someone who didn't want to be observed. I knew I should contact the police, but what would I tell them? That my missing colleague had been watching a house, that she had kept cryptic notes about strangers, that I had been conducting my own investigation for weeks without any official authority. Instead, I waited until the house appeared empty and approached the basement windows. The black paint was old and peeling in places, creating small gaps where light could enter. I pressed my face close to the glass and peered inside. The basement was divided into sections by hanging plastic sheeting. Industrial lighting cast harsh shadows across concrete floors, and there, arranged with disturbing precision, were dozens of photographs pinned to makeshift bulletin boards. Even from my limited angle, I could see that many showed the same faces, people going about their daily routines, unaware they were being documented. My hands were shaking as I stepped away from the window. I understood now why she had been so nervous, why she had made those regular trips to watch this place. She had discovered something that should have remained hidden, and her careful documentation in that notebook suggested she had been building a case. But against whom and for what purpose? I never found out what happened to her. The house was empty when the police finally searched it after I made my anonymous report. The photographs were gone, the basement cleaned with industrial-grade bleach that left the air sharp and chemical. The current owner claimed to know nothing about any surveillance operation, and without concrete evidence, the investigation stalled once again. Sometimes I wonder if she's still out there somewhere, having disappeared voluntarily to escape whatever she had uncovered. Other times, I fear she got too close to something that demanded permanent silence. The truth is, I'll never know for certain, and that uncertainty has become a weight I carry everywhere. What I do know is that her notebook is still hidden in my desk drawer, and sometimes, late at night, I find myself reading through those cryptic entries, wondering if I should continue where she left off. The rational part of my mind says to let it go, to let the authorities handle whatever darkness she stumbled into. But then I remember the fear in her eyes in that old photograph, and I realize that some mysteries choose us rather than the other way around. Crime 8, I never expected the smell of vanilla candles to make me nauseous. But there it was, that sickly sweet scent clinging to everything in her apartment when I walked in for the first time since the investigation began. The landlord had handed me the keys with shaking fingers, muttering something about insurance and legal formalities. I wasn't supposed to be there alone, but sometimes you need to feel a place breathe around you to understand what really happened. The living room looked normal enough. A beige couch facing a television that still had her fingerprints on the remote. Books stacked neatly on the coffee table, their spines perfectly aligned like she'd arranged them just before leaving. But something felt staged, too perfect, like a museum display of someone's life rather than a place where someone actually lived. I'd been assigned to review the case files, nothing more. A routine reassessment of evidence that had been sitting in storage for months. The original investigators had concluded it was a simple disappearance, probably voluntary. People leave their lives behind all the time, they said. No signs of struggle, no forced entry, no blood. Just an empty apartment and a worried sister who insisted something was wrong. The sister had called me 3 times that first week, her voice getting smaller each time. She kept saying the same thing. Her sister would never leave without taking her jewelry box. It was their grandmother's, handed down through generations. The kind of thing you grab even if you're running for your life. But there it sat on the dresser, untouched, still playing that tinny melody when you lifted the lid. I found myself returning to that jewelry box repeatedly as I went through the apartment. Each time I opened it, the same ballerina spun to the same tune, and each time I noticed something new. The velvet lining was pulled up in one corner, revealing the cardboard beneath. Someone had been looking for something, but they'd been careful about it, methodical, not the desperate searching of someone in a hurry. The bedroom was where things started to feel wrong in ways I couldn't name. The bed was made with military precision, corners tucked so tight you could bounce a coin off the surface. But the pillows were dented, shaped by heads that had rested there recently. 2 heads from the look of it. The missing woman lived alone, according to every piece of documentation I'd reviewed. I photographed everything, even though the original team had already done that work. Sometimes you see things differently when you're looking through your own lens. The bathroom cabinet held the usual collection of medicines and toiletries, but the prescription bottles told a story no one had mentioned in the reports. Anxiety medication, sleeping pills, antidepressants. All filled recently, all nearly empty despite being dated just weeks before she disappeared. The kitchen drawer wouldn't close properly. I pulled it out completely and found a cell phone wedged behind it, an older model that didn't match the smartphone found in her purse. The battery was dead, but when I charged it, the call history revealed numbers that weren't in any of the reports. Numbers that, when I traced them, led to disconnected lines and fake names. The apartment manager was a nervous man who kept checking his watch while we talked. He'd given her a good recommendation, he said. Quiet tenant, always paid on time, never complained about anything. But his hands shook when he handed me the spare key, and he avoided looking directly at the apartment door. When I asked about maintenance requests, he claimed there weren't any, but I'd already found the work orders shoved behind a filing cabinet in his office. 3 separate calls about strange noises coming from the walls. I interviewed the neighbors without revealing my real purpose, pretending to be conducting a routine follow-up. The woman next door remembered sounds of moving furniture in the middle of the night, heavy objects being dragged across the floor. She'd complained to the manager twice, but was told the apartment was empty. When I showed her the dates of her complaints, they all fell within the week after the disappearance was reported. The missing woman's workplace painted a picture of someone under pressure. Her supervisor mentioned missed deadlines and distracted behavior in the weeks before she vanished. Coworkers described her as increasingly paranoid, claiming someone was following her, watching her apartment building. Security footage from the lobby showed her checking over her shoulder constantly, taking different routes to the elevator each day. But it was the parking garage footage that made everything shift. The timestamp showed her car leaving the building 3 days after she was reported missing. The figure behind the wheel wore a hood pulled low, but something about the posture, the way they gripped the steering wheel, didn't match her usual driving habits. I'd watched hours of earlier footage, and she always drove with one hand, usually gesturing while talking on the phone. This person drove with both hands at 10 and 2, rigid and careful. The car was found abandoned 2 states away, wiped clean of fingerprints, but containing items that supposedly proved she'd left voluntarily. Her passport, some cash, even a handwritten note about needing to start over somewhere new. But the handwriting, when I compared it to samples from her workplace, showed subtle differences. The pressure was wrong, the spacing unnatural, like someone trying very hard to copy her style. I started having dreams about that vanilla candle smell. In the dreams, I was searching through rooms that looked exactly like her apartment, but every door I opened led to another identical room. The candles were always burning, always filling the air with that cloying sweetness, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear that jewelry box playing its endless tune. The breakthrough came when I decided to examine the apartment's utility records. The gas bill showed usage spikes during the week she went missing, despite the apartment supposedly being empty. Someone had been cooking, heating the space, living there while everyone believed she was gone. The water usage told the same story, patterns consistent with 2 people rather than 1. When I confronted the apartment manager with these records, his story began to fall apart. He admitted to having a spare key made for someone who claimed to be her boyfriend, someone who'd paid him cash to keep quiet about coming and going. He described a man of average height with forgettable features, someone who seemed to know exactly what he wanted and how to get it. The investigation took a different turn when I found the storage unit. The rental agreement was in her name, but the signature was the same careful forgery I'd seen on the note found in her car. Inside were boxes of her belongings, things that should have been in her apartment. Photo albums, important documents, items with obvious sentimental value. Someone had packed up her life with methodical precision, removing all traces of who she really was. Among her possessions was a diary I hadn't known existed. The entries from her final weeks painted a picture of escalating fear. She wrote about feeling watched, about things in her apartment being moved slightly when she was away. She'd started taking pictures of how she left things, comparing them when she returned. The differences were subtle but consistent. Someone was regularly entering her space. The final entries mentioned meeting someone who made her feel safe after weeks of terror. She wrote about plans to disappear together, to start fresh somewhere no one could find them. But her handwriting grew shaky in those last pages, and the final entry was just 2 words, repeated over and over until the pen tore through the paper. Help me. I brought my findings to the original investigators, expecting them to reopen the case with renewed interest. Instead, I was told that the evidence was circumstantial, that people often feel paranoid before making dramatic life changes. The storage unit proved she'd planned her departure, they said. The utility spikes could be explained by faulty readings. The handwriting differences were within normal variation for someone under stress. But I kept thinking about that jewelry box, still sitting on her dresser, still playing its haunting melody. If she'd really left willingly, why would she abandon something so precious? And why did the apartment manager's description of her supposed boyfriend match no one in her life, no one in her photos, no one her sister had ever met? The case was officially closed again, filed away with a notation about voluntary disappearance. I was reassigned to other investigations, other missing persons who might have better chances of being found. But some nights I still smell vanilla candles in my dreams, and I wonder if somewhere in another identical apartment that jewelry box is still playing its endless song for someone who will never come home to hear it. Crime 9, I found the recorder in my grandmother's bedroom closet while cleaning out her house after the funeral. It was wedged behind a shoebox full of old photographs, the kind with sticky backs that leave residue when you peel them off. The device was small, silver, with a crack running down one side. When I pressed play, static filled the room before a voice emerged, not my grandmother's voice, but someone younger, desperate. The voice belonged to a woman I didn't recognize. She spoke in fragments, her words cutting through interference that made the recording sound like it was made underwater. She mentioned a man who came to the house regularly, someone who fixed things that weren't broken. She described how he would linger in doorways, how his hands would shake when he counted out change. The woman's voice grew quieter as she spoke about finding things moved in her bedroom, about waking up with the taste of copper in her mouth. I rewound the recording and listened again. This time I caught something else, background noise that sounded like breathing, but not from the woman speaking. Someone else was in the room with her. The breathing was measured, patient, like someone waiting for the right moment to interrupt. My grandmother had lived alone for the last 15 years of her life. I visited her regularly, helped with groceries and doctor appointments. She never mentioned any repair work being done on the house. The place was old but sturdy, built when craftsmanship meant something. Nothing ever seemed to need fixing. I searched through the rest of her belongings and found receipts tucked inside a cookbook she never used. Small amounts paid to someone whose name was written in pencil, faded but still readable. The handwriting wasn't my grandmother's, it was too neat, too deliberate. The dates on the receipts spanned several months, ending just weeks before she died. The woman on the recording described a smell that followed the man around, not unpleasant, but distinct, like fresh soap mixed with something metallic. I remembered that smell from my grandmother's house, especially in the last few months of her life. I had assumed it was some new cleaning product she was using, or maybe medication. The scent would hit you when you first walked in, then fade as you got used to it. I played the recording for my mother, but the quality was too poor for her to identify the voice. She suggested it might be a radio program my grandmother had accidentally recorded, or maybe a neighbor's conversation picked up by the device. But radio programs don't have that kind of intimacy, that raw fear threading through every word. The woman on the recording mentioned hiding something under the floorboards in the bedroom. I went back to my grandmother's house with a flashlight and examined every inch of the floor. Most of the wood was solid, but near the closet, one board gave slightly under pressure. I pried it up with a screwdriver and found a small metal box wrapped in plastic. Inside the box were photographs, not family pictures, but surveillance shots taken from a distance. They showed my grandmother leaving the house, getting into her car, talking to neighbors. Someone had been watching her for months, documenting her routines. The photos were numbered and dated, organized like evidence in a case file. At the bottom of the box was a note written in the same neat handwriting as the receipts. It contained an address and a phone number, along with a single line, "She knows what she saw." The address belonged to a house 3 blocks away, a place I had walked past countless times without giving it a second thought. I called the number and listened to it ring. No answer, but the voicemail greeting was brief and professional. A man's voice, calm and measured, the kind of voice that would put you at ease if you met him in person. He mentioned repair services and asked callers to leave detailed messages about their needs. The recording device had other files on it. Most were corrupted or filled with static, but one played clearly enough to make out fragments of conversation. Two voices this time, the woman from the first recording and a man who spoke in measured tones. She was asking him to leave her alone, to stop coming to the house. He was explaining that he only wanted to help, that she was confused about what she thought she had seen. Their conversation was interrupted by a sound I recognized, the doorbell at my grandmother's house with its distinctive two-tone chime. The recording continued for several minutes after that, capturing footsteps, the sound of a door closing, then silence. The woman never spoke again on any of the recordings. I drove to the address from the note and parked across the street. The house looked ordinary, well-maintained, with a small garden and a tidy driveway. A van was parked outside with magnetic signs advertising handyman services. Through the front window, I could see someone moving around inside, but the curtains were too thick to make out any details. My grandmother died in her sleep, the coroner said. Natural causes, no signs of distress. But I remembered how she had seemed different in those final weeks, more cautious, checking locks multiple times, jumping at unexpected sounds. I had attributed it to aging, to the natural paranoia that comes with living alone. The woman's voice on the recording haunted me. She spoke with a kind of certainty that comes from seeing something you wish you hadn't. She mentioned watching from her bedroom window, seeing someone in the yard who wasn't supposed to be there. She described how he would test the doors and windows, not to break in, but to see if she was paying attention. I found myself driving past the house with the van more often than I should have. The man who lived there was probably innocent, probably just a handyman who had done work for my grandmother. But the recordings suggested something else, something that made my chest tighten every time I thought about it. The last file on the device was the longest. The woman's voice was different this time, resigned, almost calm. She talked about leaving the recorder where someone would find it, about making sure her story wouldn't disappear with her. She mentioned a hiding place, somewhere safe where the truth could wait for the right person to discover it. She never said her name, never mentioned exactly what she had witnessed, but she left enough clues to paint a picture of someone who had seen too much, who had become inconvenient to someone who valued his privacy above all else. The breathing in the background grew heavier as she spoke, as if someone was getting closer to where she was hiding. I still have the recorder. Sometimes I play the files late at night, trying to catch details I might have missed. The woman's voice has become familiar, like a friend I never met but feel I know intimately. I've memorized the rhythm of her breathing, the way she pauses before saying something important. The house 3 blocks away is for sale now. The van is gone and new people have moved in. They seem nice enough, young couple with a baby, the kind of neighbors who wave from their porch and borrow sugar. But I can't shake the feeling that some questions are better left unanswered, that some truths are too dangerous to pursue. The recorder sits in my desk drawer now, next to my grandmother's reading glasses and a handful of her favorite bookmarks. I tell myself I should turn it over to the police, but what would I say? That I found evidence of something that might not have happened, involving people who might not exist. The woman's voice feels real enough, but recordings can be deceiving. Sometimes I wonder if my grandmother knew about the device, if she left it there for me to find. She was always clever that way, leaving little puzzles for me to solve. But this puzzle doesn't have a satisfying solution. It only has more questions, deeper shadows, and the growing certainty that some secrets are meant to stay buried. Story 10. In a quiet neighborhood, a mysterious package found its way into the hands of Sarah Miller. The box, devoid of any markings except her address, contained a VHS tape and a cryptic note instructing her to watch it alone. Intrigued, Sarah hesitated but ultimately succumbed to curiosity. As she played the tape, a man named Daniel Whitaker appeared on the screen, proclaiming his innocence in a murder case that had shaken their community. His words carried a weight of urgency and desperation as he detailed his unjust implication in the crime. Detective Eliza Ramirez found herself entangled in a web of deceit as more tapes surfaced, each revealing a piece of the puzzle that challenged the official narrative surrounding Catherine Walsh's murder. The victim's involvement in exposing corruption within a pharmaceutical giant added a layer of complexity to the case, casting doubt on the seemingly straightforward evidence against Whitaker. As Sarah received a second package containing incriminating documents, the truth began to unravel. Through a series of revelations, it became clear that Whitaker had been framed by powerful forces intent on silencing Walsh's whistleblowing efforts. With the discovery of a hidden storage unit containing crucial evidence, justice slowly tilted in favor of the truth seekers. The resolution of the case was not marked by a dramatic arrest, but by the quiet unveiling of a carefully constructed conspiracy. Executives were brought to account, a corrupt security head exposed, and a dangerous drug halted in its tracks. Whitaker, once a fugitive, emerged from the shadows, vindicated but scarred by his ordeal. And Sarah, the unwitting recipient of the package that set everything in motion, found herself at the heart of a transformative journey towards justice. In the end, as Sarah and Whitaker shared a moment of reflection on her porch, they acknowledged the serendipitous nature of their connection. The wrong address, it seemed, had led them down a path of uncovering truths that lay hidden beneath the surface. The VHS tapes, now silent witnesses to a tale of manipulation and redemption, served as a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected packages can hold the keys to unlocking a world of secrets. Story 11. Once upon a time, a faint flicker danced across the baby monitor screen like a fleeting shadow in the night. The mother, nestled in the quiet of her home, brushed it off as mere interference, a glitch in the technology. But then a crackling of static pierced the air, and a soft voice, almost ethereal, whispered, "SHHH, go back to sleep." A chill crept down her spine, freezing her in place as she listened, her heart drumming a frantic beat in her chest. Without a second thought, she raced to her son's room, a sense of dread tightening its grip on her. Upon entering, she found the crib empty, devoid of the warmth of her precious child. The window stood closed, the door securely locked. The only anomaly in the room was a plush rabbit, its once innocent gaze now haunting as it lay abandoned on the floor, as if silently watching her every move. Panic seized her, and she screamed until her voice grew hoarse, the sound echoing through the empty halls. Neighbors, stirred by her cries, summoned help, and soon the authorities descended upon the scene. There they discovered her cradling the stuffed rabbit, lost in a world of disbelief and sorrow. Samuel, her 4-month-old infant, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a void that no words could fill. The investigation that followed was shrouded in mystery. No signs of forced entry marred the pristine facade of the home, the security system standing vigilant through the night. The footage from the baby monitor held only that haunting voice and the crackle of static, offering no tangible clues to the enigma that had unfolded. Suspicions swirled, casting a shadow over the grieving mother. Her husband, Daniel, absent during the night of the disappearance, became a person of interest. Strained by the weight of their shared loss and hidden struggles, their fractured relationship drew scrutiny. Medical records unveiled her battle with postpartum depression, painting a portrait of a woman grappling with inner demons in the wake of motherhood. As the authorities delved deeper, a glimmer of hope emerged, a thread of evidence that led them down a new path. Microscopic fibers, foreign to the household, clung to the nursery windowsill, hinting at an intruder with a skillful hand. The focus shifted, unveiling a tale of clandestine movements in the darkness. Security footage from neighboring homes whispered of a shadowy figure, a phantom in the night, weaving through the veil of secrecy. A singular footprint in the soft earth bore the mark of a specialized boot, a clue that pointed towards a hidden truth waiting to be unearthed. Daniel's return brought a revelation, his hands betraying the secrets they held. Unusual calluses spoke of a hobby taken up in the guise of stress relief rock climbing, a pursuit that now cast a shadow of doubt upon his innocence. Financial records painted a grim picture, a portrait of greed and deceit lurking beneath the surface. The unraveling of Daniel's web exposed a chilling reality. A second family, a scheme woven in shadows, and a plan orchestrated with precision came to light. The digital realm held the key, revealing a web of deceit spun by those closest to the heart of the matter. In a basement hidden from prying eyes, the truth lay waiting to be discovered. Samuel, alive and well, cradled in the arms of a woman named Elena, specter from the past, haunting the present with her silent vigil. The pieces fell into place, tracing a narrative of loss, obsession, and betrayal. The trial echoed with the weight of truth as the whispered words from the baby monitor reverberated through the hushed courtroom. Daniel's cough, a damning echo of his presence on that fateful night, sealed his fate alongside Elaine, partners in crime bound by a web of lies. As justice prevailed, Rebecca and Samuel sought solace in a new beginning, far from the shadows of the past. The monitor stood silent, a sentinel of the truth that had shattered their world, its gaze forever fixed on the memories locked away in a box, the stuffed rabbit, a silent witness to the darkness that had once enveloped their lives. In the quiet of the night, as sleep gently claimed the restless, the story whispered its final verse, a tale of mystery, intrigue, and the enduring resilience of a mother's love, woven into the fabric of time. Story 12. The quaint costume emporium was on the verge of shutting its doors, liquidating its ancient stock. Amidst the remnants of forgotten disguises, a woman's gaze fell upon a mask perched on a dusty shelf. Its features, delicately crafted yet eerily lifelike, held a mysterious allure. Placing it on the counter, she noticed the cashier's hesitation. "That's not ours," he muttered cryptically. Perplexed, she sought a tag but found none. Without explanation, she decided to take it home. That very night, a faint rustle disturbed her slumber, a whisper of fabric shifting. Startled awake, she searched for the mask on her dresser, only to discover it absent. Instead, it sat upon her nightstand, positioned to face her. This mysterious woman, known as Catherine Reed, would later be found by her concerned neighbor. Upon entering Catherine's dim abode, the neighbor noticed the slightly ajar front door, allowing a ribbon of dawn's light to spill into the shadowed interior. Originally intending to return a borrowed book, the neighbor stumbled upon a haunting scene that would puzzle investigators for years to come. Catherine lay motionless on her bedroom floor, the enigmatic mask nowhere in sight. Detective Morgan arrived at the somber scene as forensics meticulously documented the evidence. The rhythmic clicks of the camera shutters echoed amidst subdued murmurs. "No signs of forced entry," remarked an observant officer, diligently jotting notes. The detective's keen eyes scanned the room, absorbing minute details that others might overlook. A lone drawer ajar, a lipstick-stained watered glass on the nightstand, seemingly ordinary elements in contrast to the life extinguished before her. The medical examiner, his countenance solemn, analyzed Catherine's body. Initial inspection reveals no clear cause of death, no visible wounds, no indications of a struggle, he intoned, gesturing towards her frozen expression of terror. Kneeling beside her, the detective whispered, something frightened her beyond words. Catherine had led a quiet existence as an art appraiser, renowned among her peers for her meticulous nature and unwavering dedication to authenticity. She could discern a forgery from afar, attested her employer during questioning. Her eye for detail was unparalleled. The detective pondered whether this very talent had inadvertently led to her tragic demise. Surveillance footage from the costume shop unveiled a peculiar occurrence. The cashier appeared genuinely perplexed by the mask, prompting him to beckon the owner, who promptly disavowed any connection to the enigmatic item. Though the audio was indistinct, lip-reading experts later confirmed the owner's words. We never stocked anything resembling this. Delving deeper, the detective visited the now vacant shop, confronting the anxious owner. The mask materialized during our clearance sale. Its origin remains a mystery. It never graced our inventory, the owner divulged hesitantly. Under further scrutiny, he reluctantly disclosed, such anomalies occurred sporadically after acquiring items from the estate of a collector whose demise was shrouded in enigma. A breakthrough emerged when forensics unearthed microscopic fibers embedded in Catherine's fingertips. She clutched onto something, the astute lab technician elucidated. These fibers are uncommon, neither modern nor synthetic. They comprise a blend of human hair and an unidentified organic substance that eludes all databases. The investigation unveiled a trail of comparable deaths spanning decades. Each victim had acquired a peculiar mask prior to their demise, each bearing an expression of unadulterated horror. Yet each case remained a baffling enigma. A retired detective, seasoned in such enigmatic affairs, agreed to share his insights. Seated in a dimly lit chamber, he passed a weathered file to the current detective. Inside each mask, hidden behind the lining, we discovered inscriptions, ancient symbols, he disclosed. A scholar we consulted postulated their association with a ritual involving the transference of souls. A pivotal revelation surfaced unexpectedly. Concealed behind a loose baseboard in Catherine's residence, a journal was unearthed. Her final entry chronicled an escalating sense of being surveilled, a pervasive presence haunting her abode. Following the cashier's cryptic reaction, she delved into the mask's origins, linking it to a series of enigmatic demises. "The mask stirs," she penned with mounting trepidation. "It observes me as I slumber." Inside, I discern markings, symbols mirroring those from unresolved cases. The collector who owned these masks met a similar fate. Each mask claims a life before moving on. The entity hungers for a new vessel upon reaching someone who comprehends its true nature. Compiling the evidence esoteric fibers, Catherine's findings, the recurring pattern of fatalities, the detective ascertained the true cause of death. The medical examiner conclusively determined Catherine's demise as a result of cardiac arrest induced by extreme terror. What unfathomable horror could evoke such paralyzing fear that the heart ceases to beat? The case took an even darker turn upon the unearthing of surveillance footage from a neighboring residence. The recording captured a figure departing Catherine's domicile under the cloak of night, donning a mask resembling her visage. Strangely, the entity mimicked Catherine's distinctive gait, albeit unnaturally robotic, as if someone were inhabiting her movements like an ill-fitting guise. An alert was issued for the missing mask, yet it eluded discovery until 6 months later, when reports surfaced of a peculiar mask surfacing in a vintage boutique across the nation. Regrettably, by the time investigators arrived, it had already changed hands, the buyer's identity unrecorded. The case remains an enigma, officially unresolved. The detective safeguards Catherine's journal within her desk drawer, a somber reminder of a truth too outlandish for official documentation. At times, in the stillness of night, she startles awake, sensing an unseen presence. Hastening to secure her windows and doors, she endeavors to banish thoughts of the mask, destined to ensnare another unwitting soul, a vessel awaiting occupation, traversing from one victim to the next in an unending cycle that commenced eons ago and persists unabated. The mask lingers, awaiting its inevitable rediscovery, and when the time comes, another shall awaken to the subtle rustle of movement in the shadows, only to find it inching closer as they slumber, its vacant gaze fixed upon them, hungering for the essence concealed behind their eyes. Story 13. The aged apartment possessed its peculiarities: pipes that groaned, floorboards that creaked. However, the new tenant discerned that what she heard wasn't ordinary. The footsteps sounded too steady, too purposeful. They emanated from above, deliberate and languid, yet she resided on the topmost floor. One evening she gathered her courage to tap on the ceiling with a broomstick. The sound ceased. A hushed stillness enveloped the room. Then a solitary knock reverberated from inside the ceiling. Sarah Coleman chose not to disclose the knocking incident to anyone. She convinced herself it was merely the building settling, or perhaps a small creature that had found its way into the attic space. Even as the footsteps persisted night after night, she adapted, raising the volume of her television, donning headphones to bed, anything to drown out the methodical footfalls that traversed her ceiling in the shadows. Detective Morris first learned of the apartment when a maintenance worker stumbled upon a concealed crawlspace during routine repairs. The worker had removed a portion of drywall in the hallway outside Sarah's apartment to address a water leak. Behind it, he unearthed a narrow passageway that defied the building plans. Upon shining his flashlight inside, the beam illuminated an improvised living area: food wrappers, water bottles, a soiled blanket, and a small notebook. The building superintendent promptly contacted the police. Detective Morris arrived with his partner, Detective Rivera, to find the maintenance worker pallid and trembling. "Someone's been living in the walls," he kept repeating. "Someone's been watching." The notebook contained meticulous observations of Sarah Coleman, her daily routine, her visitors, her dinner choices, the television programs she watched, her shower times, her sleep patterns. The handwriting began orderly but devolved into chaos towards the concluding pages, with strange symbols adorning the margins. "The subject no longer responds to my signals," read the final entry. "She has chosen to ignore me. No one ignores me." Forensics teams meticulously combed the crawl space and uncovered fingerprints that matched no records in any database. They unveiled a labyrinth of passages integrated into the walls and ceilings of the building, some dating back decades as per structural analysis. The passages linked to 5 different apartments, terminating in observation points, tiny openings camouflaged as fixtures or minor damages solely in Sarah Coleman's abode. The investigative team interviewed current inhabitants. None reported anything out of the ordinary beyond the usual noises of apartment living. Former residents recounted a disparate narrative. 3 previous occupants of Sarah's apartment recounted feeling watched or hearing inexplicable movements. One had relocated after a mere 2 weeks. None had voiced their encounters, apprehensive they would sound paranoid. A breakthrough in the case emerged when forensics detected minuscule blood spatter in one of the crawl spaces. DNA analysis linked it to Martin Weaver, a former tenant who had vanished without a trace 4 years earlier. His family had filed a missing persons report, but the case had gone cold. He had resided in the apartment directly beneath Sarah's. Detective Morris revisited Martin's disappearance. According to neighbors, Martin had lamented about noises above his apartment. He had confronted the tenant residing above him at that time, a reserved man named Edward who kept to himself. Shortly after, Martin disappeared. Edward vacated the following month, leaving no forwarding address. Investigators delved into Edward's tenancy history and uncovered a pattern. He had dwelled in 6 different apartment complexes over 2 decades. In each instance, he had requested top-floor units, forged few social connections, and eventually departed without notice. A neighbor from his 3rd residence recalled him as intense and remembered his frequent grievances about requiring silence. The investigators unearthed property records indicating that Edward had acquired remote rural land. Upon reaching the site, they chanced upon a cabin adorned with photos and notes lining the walls. Images of residents from various apartment buildings, including Sarah Coleman and Martin Weaver. Maps detailing ventilation systems and structural vulnerabilities. Elaborate journals delineating observations of the specimens and sustaining the habitat. In the heart of the cabin stood a corkboard bearing newspaper clippings, missing persons reports, 6 in total, all former apartment inhabitants from buildings where Edward had resided. Deep gouges marred the wooden floor beneath the board, suggestive of something weighty being dragged repeatedly. Behind the cabin, cadaver dogs guided investigators to a freshly disturbed patch of earth. Excavation unveiled human remains, and then another grave, and another. As forensic anthropologists commenced the somber task of identifying the victims, Detective Morris returned to Sarah's apartment complex. The crawl spaces had been sealed off, yet residents still reported sporadic noises. Maintenance workers, while installing new security systems, stumbled upon an object tucked into a corner where the ceiling met the wall in the hallway, a small notebook, newer than the initial one discovered. The initial page bore only one sentence: "They found my old nest, but not my new one." The writing mirrored that of the former notebook. The final page featured a rudimentary sketch of Sarah's apartment layout with a crimson-marked new passage, and a date for that night. Officers hastened to evacuate Sarah, but her apartment stood vacant. Her phone rested on the kitchen counter. Her television remained on. Her shower ran. In the bathroom, the mirror fogged with steam. As it dissipated, a message materialized, inscribed by a finger on the glass: "Look up." The ceiling panel above the shower had been removed. The hunt for Edward persists. Investigators have identified him as Edward Mercer, a former construction worker specializing in renovations. His comprehension of building structures facilitated the creation of his concealed network of observation points and passages. Thermal imaging scans of Sarah's building divulged no signs of present habitation within the walls. Sarah Coleman remains missing. Her case has been intertwined with similar disappearances across multiple states. Authorities have cautioned apartment building managers about unauthorized alterations and hidden spaces. The image that torments Detective Morris most is not the graves or the journals or even the photographs of unsuspecting residents. It's the notion of Sarah, night after night, hearing those footsteps above her in an apartment devoid of an upstairs neighbor. The footsteps that ceased when she knocked and then echoed back. Sometimes, during solitary nights in his abode, Detective Morris catches himself gazing up at his ceiling, listening, waiting, and pondering who else might be listening too. Story 14. The worn envelope whispered of forgotten days, its edges tinged with the sepia of time, yet the stamp gleamed fresh, a recent journey marked in ink. With delicate care, the detective unfurled its secrets. Nestled within was a solitary sheet, bearing a message typed in urgency, the words dancing in uneven rhythms. "I am sorry for what I did." The paper exuded a subtle dampness, carrying the faint scent of iron on its fibers. It was then that a crimson streak along the bottom edge caught their eye, a vivid reminder of something darker than mere ink. Detective Sarah Morgan, with practiced precision, encased the letter in an evidence bag, her gloved hands cradling the weight of implications. The forensics team's findings echoed her suspicions. The reddish stain bore the genetic signature of human blood, linking back to an unsolved tale of tragedy that had long haunted the corridors of the department. The victim, a young journalist by the name of Rebecca Warren, had met her end in a flurry of violence, her body a canvas of stab wounds, her unfinished stories left to gather dust. Her laptop had vanished, her notes scattered like fallen leaves, a silent testament to the unfinished symphony of her life. The case had grown cold, a specter lingering in the shadows despite the tireless efforts of those who sought justice. And now this missive, wrapped in anonymity, had found its way to the doorstep of the Homicide Division, bearing a message shrouded in enigma. The paper and its weathered companion bore scant traces of their sender, as if veiled in the mists of secrecy. The postmark, however, whispered of a path to follow, a thread to unravel the mysteries that lay ahead. Morgan gathered her team in the dimly lit confines of the briefing room, where walls bore witness to the ghosts of crimes past, photographs frozen in time, timelines weaving a tapestry of despair, and profiles of suspects who had slipped through the cracks of justice. At the heart of it all, she pinned the image of the letter, a beacon of hope in a sea of uncertainty. "This changes everything," she murmured to the shadows. "Our quarry reveals a crack in their armor, a flicker of remorse." Detective James Chen, her stalwart companion in this odyssey of shadows, cast a critical gaze upon the letter. "Or a ruse," he countered, his voice a whisper in the gathering gloom. "A macabre performance meant to taunt us, to lead us astray." The dance of investigation led them to a relic of the past, a typewriter with a soul of its own, its keys bearing the imprint of a bygone era. Rare, elusive, yet not beyond the reach of those who sought the truth. The hunt began. A web of contacts spun across the land in search of this elusive artifact. As the shadows of the past unfurled, they delved into the tapestry of Rebecca's life, a portrait painted in shades of determination and devotion. Her editor spoke of her with reverence, a warrior of truth unyielding in her quest to expose the veils of deception. Her final quest had led her down a path fraught with peril, delving into the secrets of a family entwined with the tendrils of power and privilege. A family torn asunder by the specter of inheritance, by whispers of betrayal that lingered in the halls of their opulent estate. In the labyrinth of interviews and interrogations, they turned their gaze upon Michael Barnes, Rebecca's once devoted companion. His visage, once a mask of grief, now bore the tremors of unease, the shadow of guilt dancing in his eyes. She spoke of shadows that followed her, he confessed, his voice a fragile thread in a tapestry of secrets. I dismissed her fears as folly, as the ravings of a mind consumed by shadows. I failed her. As they pursued this new light, a second missive arrived, bearing the same macabre signature of blood and ink. The words woven within spoke of truths long buried, of sins concealed in shadows. She uncovered the web of deceit, it whispered, a lament carried on the winds of regret. The path of investigation wound its way to the doorstep of the patriarch, where Richard, the eldest son, stood as a sentinel of secrets. His collection of antiquities held echoes of the past, of stories left untold. The truth, when it came, bore the scent of betrayal, a betrayal woven in the fabric of family ties. The forensics team's revelation cast a pall over the mansion's opulence, as microscopic fibers linked the letters to a stationery known only to Alina, the youngest daughter. The tendrils of truth unfurled, revealing a tapestry of deception woven by blood. Richard's facade crumbled, his mask of innocence slipping to reveal the visage of a killer in the shadows. And in the hidden chamber of his secrets, they found the instrument of his downfall, a vintage typewriter, its keys stained with the echoes of a life lost. The whispers of the past converged in a symphony of justice, as the ties that bound Richard and Michael unraveled before the eyes of truth. Bank records bore witness to transactions shrouded in shadows, payments made in the currency of silence. And as Michael's confession echoed in the halls of justice, the final piece of the puzzle fell into place, a recording, a testament to the shadows that danced in the hearts of men. In the hush of the courtroom, justice unfurled its wings, casting a light upon the shadows that had concealed the truth for so long. Richard's protestations rang hollow in the face of overwhelming evidence, his words but whispers in the storm of justice. The jurors, guided by the beacon of truth, rendered their verdict a verdict etched in the annals of justice. As Richard was led away, the weight of his sins heavy upon his shoulders, Detective Morgan approached the specters of Rebecca as past her parents, left to mourn a life cut short by shadows. No words could heal the wounds left by her absence, but in the echoes of justice they found a measure of solace. The letters, stained with the blood of the past, bore witness to the fragility of secrets, to the inevitability of justice. In the silence of the evidence room, they stood as a monument to the power of truth, a reminder that even the most carefully woven lies can unravel in the face of justice's unwavering gaze. And thus, the tale of Rebecca Warren became a testament to the shadows that lurk in the hearts of men, to the echoes of guilt that linger in the halls of justice. Story 15, the aged apartment exuded a sense of history, its walls holding secrets of bygone eras. The heating system emitted a low, rhythmic groan, and the pipes rattled with a familiar cadence. It was all part of the building's character, or so she believed. Until one night, a faint voice, almost imperceptible, drifted through the vents like a ghostly echo. It wasn't the typical background noise of neighbors conversing. It was a soft whisper, calling out her name in the stillness of the night. Intrigued and slightly unnerved, she leaned closer, pressing her ear against the cold metal grate. A rush of icy air brushed against her skin, followed by a gentle, playful voice that seemed to dance on the edge of reality. "I know you can hear me," it murmured, teasing and enigmatic. Detective Morgan Shaw stood in the center of the empty apartment, a sense of foreboding settling over her like a shroud. Her gaze fixated on the rusted vent cover, forcibly removed from the wall. The forensics team meticulously combed through the room, capturing every detail with their cameras, as if trying to freeze the moment in time. The victim, Alina Reeves, had vanished without a trace, her absence unnoticed until the pungent odor caught the attention of the building manager. What they uncovered within the ventilation system defied logic and sent shivers down Shaw's spine. Officer Patel, his voice solemn, recited from his notes about Alina's earlier reports of hearing voices through the vents, dismissed as mere quirks of an aging building. But the scratch marks around the vent spoke a different tale, a desperate struggle to escape, to break free from an unseen force within. Alina, a beloved kindergarten teacher with a contagious smile and a penchant for nurturing houseplants, had exhibited signs of paranoia in the days leading up to her disappearance. Her students had crafted cards in her absence, her sister filing a missing persons report with a heavy heart. During the investigation, Aliner's sister revealed the haunting truth that Aliner had been convinced of a presence watching her, speaking to her through the very vents that now seemed to whisper in Shaw's ears. As Shaw delved deeper into the mystery, she observed the apartment with newfound insight. The immaculate bed, the abandoned coffee cup, the chair positioned strategically beneath the vent, as if someone had been perched there, listening intently to the unseen whispers. The forensic evidence painted a chilling picture. Fibers matching Aliner's clothing, an unidentified fingerprint on the vent cover, and most unsettling, audio recordings from Aliner's phone capturing eerie conversations that sent shivers down Shaw's spine. A dark history loomed over the building, with past tenants recounting tales of strange noises, hallucinations, and unexplained phenomena linked to apartment 4B. Suspicion fell on Harold Weber, the enigmatic building superintendent, whose calm faade masked a deeper, ominous connection to the building's mysteries. As the investigation unfolded, a hidden passage in Aliner's bathroom revealed a chilling truth, a secret network of tunnels within the walls, a hidden realm where someone had lurked, watching, waiting, and whispering. Weber's pristine apartment belied the darkness within, as incriminating evidence on his computer unveiled a twisted obsession with his victims, a voyeuristic catalog of their lives captured through peepholes and vents. The discovery of a storage unit filled with mementos from past tenants solidified Weber's descent into madness, his eerie calmness in the face of arrest sending chills down Shaw's spine. The truth emerged in all its macabre detail. Aliner, coerced into the labyrinthine vents, sedated and disoriented, following the siren call of the whispers that promised solace within the building's walls. At trial, Weber's chilling demeanor failed to sway the jury, who swiftly delivered a verdict of guilt on all counts. As he was escorted away, his haunting words lingered in the air, a grim reminder of the darkness that had tainted the once vibrant apartment building. Now vacant and silent, the building stood as a testament to its grim past, whispers of the past lingering in the air, chilling drafts that carried echoes of voices lost to time. The residents, wary of the unseen forces at play, tried to dismiss the strange sounds that emanated from the vents, the building's very structure seeming to hold memories of a sinister presence that refused to fade away. Story 16. In the quiet stillness of a suburban neighborhood, a mysterious package arrived for Sarah Miller. Wrapped in a plain envelope, the contents stirred a sense of unease within her. A single brass key, weathered by time, lay nestled inside. Its origins were unknown, yet there was a strange familiarity that tugged at her thoughts. With a curious determination, Sarah tested the key in every lock she possessed, but each one remained unmoved by its touch. It did not belong to her world. Placing it on her coffee table, a relic of the past caught her attention. The old grandfather clock in the hallway let out a solitary, haunting chime, despite its long-standing silence. Perplexed and unsettled, Sarah sought the counsel of the authorities, sharing the peculiar incident that had found its way into her life. What began as a simple mishap soon unfurled into a web of darkness that gripped the tranquil community in fear. Initially met with skepticism, the responding officer brushed off Sarah's concerns as a mere error in delivery. A key in the mail, a trivial mistake, he suggested. However, Sarah's intuition whispered that something was amiss, a deep-seated feeling that refused to be silenced. Reluctantly, the officer accepted the key as evidence, unaware of the sinister path it would lead them down. The case landed on the desk of Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator with a keen eye for unraveling mysteries that transcended their innocuous beginnings. The brass key sat before him, an ordinary object that exuded an inexplicable sense of disquiet. Delving into Sarah's background, the detective found no traces of malice or wrongdoing. A retired teacher, a widow with grown children, her life appeared as unassuming as it seemed. Yet the key held secrets that begged to be uncovered. Forensic analysis yielded little, with only Sarah's fingerprints adorning the key. The envelope bore no clues save for a generic postmark that revealed nothing of significance. The key itself, a simple schlage, showed signs of wear and age, hinting at a past shrouded in mystery. A breakthrough emerged when Detective Harmon decided to delve deeper, running the key's unique pattern through the department's database. A cold case, dormant for 7 years, resurfaced a key that led to a storage unit concealing a grim collection of horrors. The key bore witness to blood-stained carpets, tools of cutting, and photographs of women unknown. The original investigation had faltered, unable to unmask the perpetrator behind the heinous acts. Harmon pored over the dusty files, stepping into the shoes of the retired detective who had once chased shadows. As the pieces of the puzzle slowly fell into place, a name emerged: Harold Jenkins, a ghost from the past who had resided near Sarah before vanishing without a trace. His presence loomed over the investigation, casting a shadow of dread over the community. The manhunt for Jenkins intensified, revealing a trail of deception and darkness in his wake. The discovery of a hidden room beneath the cabin's floorboards unveiled a macabre collection of keys, each bearing a name and a date, a chilling testament to lives lost in silence. The horror deepened as forensic teams unearthed remains buried behind the cabin, painting a grim picture of Jenkins' twisted legacy. Sarah, now a beacon of protection, stood at the center of a storm she never saw coming. The press dubbed him the Keymaster, a moniker that sent shivers down the spines of those who followed the unfolding saga. Fear gripped the hearts of residents as the manhunt stretched across the nation, a race against time to stop a predator in his tracks. In the wilderness, a glimpse of Jenkins sparked a frenzied pursuit, culminating in a final standoff that ended in tragedy. His lifeless form, a testament to the horrors he had wrought, left behind a legacy of pain and loss. Through it all, Sarah stood on the precipice of a nightmare she never imagined, her life forever altered by the darkness that had crept so close to her door. The grandfather clock's chime, once a harbinger of mystery, now echoed with a haunting truth, a truth she could never unhear. As the investigation drew to a close, a stark reality emerged, a reality that spoke of the monsters that lurked behind masks of normalcy. Jenkins' journal, a chronicle of his depravity, offered a glimpse into the mind of a predator who hid in plain sight. And so the keys lay silent in an evidence locker, a silent testament to lives cut short by a darkness that knew no bounds. Each key, a somber reminder of the fragility of innocence and the depths of human depravity that lurked in the shadows, waiting to be unlocked by the unsuspecting. Story 17. She cleared the mist from the mirror, gazing at her reflection. Yet a subtle unease lingered. Her features appeared unchanged, her attire familiar. But beneath the surface, a disquieting presence loomed, a flicker caught in the periphery of her vision, a movement unaligned with her own. When she turned, her reflection defied her, unmoving, observing. Thus began the enigmatic saga of Rebecca Thorne, sparked by a chilling moment in her bathroom that would perplex investigators and haunt a community for years to come. Residing alone in a modest abode within a serene suburban enclave, Rebecca led a structured existence. Her acquaintances depicted her as methodical, introverted, a woman who maintained a reserved demeanor yet remained amicable with neighbors. Occupying the role of a data analyst at a mid-sized corporation, her days unfolded with meticulous precision and routine. No indicators foretold that she would emerge as the focal point of one of the most bewildering criminal inquiries of the era. Initially, peculiar incidents seemed trivial. Objects in Rebecca's dwelling shifted inexplicably, no items missing, merely rearranged. A coffee mug displaced to a different shelf, books shuffled, her toothbrush relocated across the sink. She brushed off these anomalies as fleeting lapses, attributing them to prolonged hours in a fluorescent-lit office, scrutinizing spreadsheets until her vision blurred. Detective Marion Shaw received the initial report when Rebecca, after enduring weeks of disturbances, finally sought assistance from authorities. The preliminary evaluation yielded no evidence of criminal activity, hinting at a potential case for mental health services rather than law enforcement. Shaw cataloged the grievance but consigned it to the stack of non-urgent matters. No tangible evidence, Shaw later attested. No signs of forced entry, no missing possessions. Merely a woman sensing a disturbance within her residence. The pivotal moment transpired in the bathroom mirror. During her subsequent interaction with law enforcement, Rebecca recounted the incident vividly, an account of her reflection seemingly moving independently, a sensation of perpetual observation. This time she presented proof, footage captured by a security camera she had installed, aimed at her front entrance. The recording unveiled a revelation that sent shivers down even the most seasoned officers' spines. The grainy video depicted Rebecca departing for work in the morning. Yet 20 minutes later, an identical figure to Rebecca utilized a key to access her dwelling. Forensic experts scrutinized the footage for signs of manipulation or tampering, finding none. The individual mimicking Rebecca exhibited identical movements, attire, and even carried her distinctive leather bag. However, according to time-stamped footage from her workplace security system, Rebecca had already swiped in at her office building across town. This is a doppelganger scenario, Detective Shaw disclosed to her superior. An individual who has meticulously studied Ms. Thorne and can replicate her with eerie precision. The investigation escalated as fingerprints throughout the residence exclusively matched Rebecca's, with no trace of foreign DNA discovered. Neighbors reported routine sightings of Rebecca, with nothing out of the ordinary noted, merely her typical comings and goings. One neighbor, Mrs. Keller, recounted a peculiar encounter where she greeted Rebecca upon her return home one evening, receiving no response, a deviation from Rebecca's customary behavior, albeit not alarming. Rebecca commenced documenting the disturbances in a journal. Minor alterations within her domicile escalated. Unexplained consumables vanished from her refrigerator. Her computer displayed searches she did not initiate. Most disconcerting were the photographs on her phone, self-portraits bearing her likeness, yet captured without her recollection. In some images, her countenance appeared subtly awry, the smile too wide, the gaze too intense. "I fear I am descending into madness," she confided to Detective Shaw during their third rendezvous. "Or perhaps someone is orchestrating this delusion within me." Breakthrough arrived when investigators discerned a pattern in the security footage. The doppelganger exclusively infiltrated when Rebecca embarked on specific engagements, therapy appointments, yoga sessions, Sunday morning grocery outings, prearranged activities with predictable durations. "An individual well acquainted with your routine," Shaw elaborated. "This isn't haphazard, it is deliberate surveillance and infiltration." A forensic psychologist postulated a fixation theory, an individual fixated on assimilating Rebecca's identity, potentially aiming to supplant her entirely. Though rare, such cases were documented in psychological archives. The culprit typically experienced a mental fracture fixating on a victim embodying qualities they coveted: stability, beauty, success, normalcy. The inquiry narrowed upon Rebecca, mentioning a former co-worker, Lily Winters, terminated due to escalating erratic conduct. Lily had closely collaborated with Rebecca, frequently remarking on their resemblance. Post-dismissal, she dispatched a series of unsettling emails to Rebecca, one stating, "We could be mirror images," and another professing, "Sometimes I embody you more than yourself." Detective Shaw secured a warrant to scour Lily's residence. Unveiled within transformed the case from unsettling to harrowing. A chamber within Lily's abode had been metamorphosed into a shrine-like replica of Rebecca's bedroom. The walls adorned with snapshots, countless images of Rebecca entering her domicile, shopping, socializing, all clandestinely captured. A closet harbored duplicates of Rebecca's attire. Cosmetics mirroring Rebecca's preferred brands adorned a vanity alongside meticulous notes detailing her mannerisms, speech patterns, and daily routines. Most damning were the rehearsal videos. Lily had documented herself emulating Rebecca's gait, gestures, expressions. The evolution was conspicuous: initial endeavors clumsy and overt, subsequent ones nearly indistinguishable from the authentic Rebecca. "She aspired to usurp my existence," Rebecca murmured upon witnessing the evidence. "She wasn't merely imitating me, she was obliterating me." Forensic specialists unearthed sophisticated tools for fabricating key replicas and cloning electronic access cards. Lily had orchestrated an intricate system to monitor Rebecca's movements, including a calendar predicting her schedule in detail. Yet, Lily's ultimate objective remained elusive. Diaries found in her abode contained erratic entries oscillating between first and third person, occasionally alluding to Rebecca as me and her within the same passage. The conclusive entry sent a chill down investigators' spines. Soon, only one shall endure. The stronger persona shall prevail. Upon the authorities' pursuit to apprehend Lily, she had vanished. Signs of impulsive departure permeated her residence, drawers left ajar, certain technologies absent. A nationwide alert was disseminated. Rebecca was relocated to a secure facility under constant surveillance. For 3 weeks, authorities scrutinized every locale affiliated with her previous routine, yet Lily remained elusive. The narrative took a disquieting turn when a security officer at Rebecca's former workplace reported an anomaly. Rebecca had been sighted entering the building despite being on leave. Surveillance footage corroborated an individual resembling. Rebecca had accessed the premises utilizing a valid ID card, proceeded to her former workstation, and sifted through files for 40 minutes before departing. Meanwhile, the real Rebecca remained ensconced in protective custody at a fortified sanctuary, rendering her physical presence at the office implausible. The truth unfurled. Lily had not absconded, she had seized the moment. Assuming Rebecca's identity, she seamlessly integrated into her life while the genuine Rebecca remained concealed. The case endures as an ongoing mystery. Lily Winters eluded capture, and Rebecca Thorne elected to forge a new identity in an undisclosed location, shunning her former life. Detective Shaw preserves a photograph on her desk, two strikingly similar women. One embodies Rebecca Thorne, the other Lily Winters. At times, she scrutinizes their visages, seeking disparities, the subtle nuances distinguishing one from the other. The truly unsettling aspect, Shaw imparts to novice detectives, is not the resemblance in appearance or voice, It is the fervent desire to assume another's identity to the extent of erasing oneself in the process. Identity transcends mere presentation. It is our most fiercely guarded possession, and occasionally its worth is realized only when threatened by another's covetous intent. Story 18. In the stillness of the night, a vacant apartment held secrets untold. The new occupants, entering with cautious steps, anticipated only neglect and remnants of the past. Yet one door defied their efforts to open it, stubbornly sealed from within. A closet, a mystery waiting to be unraveled. When the landlord intervened, the expectation was mere clutter or old belongings left behind. But what greeted them was a sight that sent shivers down their spines. The walls bore witness to a haunting tale, etched with deep, erratic scratches, a silent testimony of struggle and confinement. Tucked away in a corner, an ancient flip phone lay dormant, its screen illuminated by a single unread message. Detective Morgan Shaw, seasoned in the art of unraveling enigmas, felt a chill creep down her spine as she surveyed the scene before her. It wasn't the gore or violence that unsettled her, but the silent plea echoed in those scratch marks, a plea for freedom, for escape. "We need forensics here at once," she directed her partner, Officer Reed, who diligently captured each scratch with his camera, "and fetch me the records of the previous tenants." The cryptic message on the phone glowed ominously. "I know what you did." The landlord, a figure of unease with perpetually clammy hands, disclosed that the former tenant, a reticent young woman named Emma Caldwell, had vacated abruptly, leaving behind unpaid rent. She was quiet, kept to herself, left about 6 months back, he mumbled, avoiding the gaze towards the closet. "No trouble." Forensic analysis unveiled a mosaic of blood traces within the scratches on the walls, most aligning with Emma's genetic profile. However, 2 distinct DNA samples emerged. One remained a mystery in the databases, while the other belonged to a man presumed deceased for 2 years. "This defies logic," Shaw murmured, her eyes locked on the perplexing findings. Derek Mercer, a past convict declared dead in a vehicular mishap, now left his genetic imprint in the enigmatic closet. Emma's abode whispered a narrative of interrupted existence, unopened letters, a solitary coffee cup in the sink, a neatly arranged bed. Her phone records hinted at a pattern abruptly severed, regular conversations with her sister dwindling into silence, punctuated by a flurry of calls from an unidentified number before her disappearance. Her sister mentioned a mysterious boyfriend, Officer Reed interjected. No name, just intense and private. Surveillance footage painted a chilling portrait, a shadowy figure in a baseball cap trailing Emma into her residence under the cloak of night. The puzzle began assembling as partial fingerprints matching Derek Mercer emerged on the closet's inner doorknob. He staged his demise, Shaw deduced. But why, and what tether binds him to Emma? The enigma deepened with the revelation of an unidentified DNA sample linking to a past missing person case. Lynette Porter vanished 3 years prior. Witnesses recalled a woman akin to Lynette frequenting Emma's abode. Shaw connected the dots through meticulous scrutiny of traffic recordings, tracing Derek Mercer's presence to Emma's vicinity via his mother's registered vehicle. The trail led to a secluded estate owned by the Mercer family. Behind the fortress-like basement doors, Lynette Porter awaited discovery, haggard, starved, mirroring Emma's plight in that claustrophobic closet. "He made me witness," she murmured vacantly. "Said I needed to learn the consequence of defiance." A trove of evidence unfolded. Diaries chronicling Mercer's fixation on dominance, snapshots of women resembling Emma and Lynette, and damning footage of Mercer ushering Emma into her confines. "She dared to expose me," his voice echoed in the recording. "None divulges my truths." The manhunt for Derek Mercer spanned jurisdictions. the pursuit shadowed by a psychological profile that sent shivers through the investigative ranks. Mercer wasn't just a predator, he was a connoisseur of anguish, relishing the slow erosion of hope within confined spaces. At his apprehension in a bus terminal, Mercer clutched a fresh identity and a passage to the sea, his backpack concealing ominous tools and a memento of Emma's vanishing. During interrogation, Mercer exuded a serene facade. She sent that message herself, he asserted regarding the phone. She craved discovery, but she forfeited salvation. The trial unveiled Mercer's intricate charade to feign demise, utilizing a vagrant's dental records to perpetuate the illusion. For years, he roamed incognito, preying on women reminiscent of his initial victim. Emma's remains eluded discovery, her desperate final act captured in those walls she clawed in vain. The jury swiftly pronounced Mercer guilty on all counts after a brief deliberation. As the gavel sealed his fate with a life sentence sans parole, Mercer's lips twitched, a semblance of contentment flickering in his eyes, a private riddle only he comprehended. At the sentencing, Lynette Porter's voice rang out, defiant and resolute. He ensnared us in constricted spaces because his mind dwells in shadows. But as he withers behind bars, I'll revel in the daylight. The case catalyzed a paradigm shift in missing persons investigations, emphasizing relational dynamics and rental property scrutiny. Detective Shaw preserved the closet door from Emma's abode as a poignant memento, a symbol that not all horrors are smeared in blood, but etched in the desperate marks of one battling for survival. Story 19, the town never spoke of the house on the edge of the woods. It stood solitary, its windows opaque, its porch bowed beneath the weight of time. No one laid claim to it, no one could recall its builder. Yet when a band of wanderers strayed too near, they glimpsed something peculiar, names etched into the timber cladding, carved deep like omens. At the base of the list, crisp and untouched, was a name unfamiliar to all, until one of them murmured, voice quivering, "That's mine." In the dead of night, a call came through. Dispatch cataloged it as a routine trespassing incident. The caller was Mason Wright, the head wanderer who found his name etched into the forsaken abode. The responding officers anticipated mere adolescent mischief, perhaps a jest among comrades, but what they encountered defied rationale. Detective Sarah Keller arrived as twilight blanketed the forest. Her flashlight's beam sliced through the darkness, unveiling the weathered front of the building. The names, 27 in total, cascaded vertically down the eastern side. Some had blurred with age, nearly vanishing against the ashen wood. Others remained sharp, as if freshly carved. And at the foot, Mason Wright, the incision still faintly smelling of sawdust. "I've never set foot here before," Mason asserted, his breath billowing in the frigid air. "I can't fathom how anyone would know my name." The inquiry commenced with background checks on each name inscribed. The findings sent shivers down the spines of the detective crew. Every name corresponded to an individual reported missing over the past 40 years. Some cases had grown cold, others remained active. Yet all shared a chilling similarity: the persons had vanished while hiking solo. Forensic experts photographed each etching, cataloging the depths, techniques, and weathering patterns. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, aligned with a missing persons case from 37 years prior. The case files recounted a young lady who ventured into these woods and never re-emerged. Search teams discovered naught but a lone hiking boot beside a brook. Detective Keller extensively interviewed Mason. His narrative stayed unwavering. He bore no ties to the region beyond this trek with 4 college comrades. They had chosen the path at random, following an online suggestion. Nothing in his past linked him to any of the other names on the wall. The focus shifted to Mason's companions. Emily Chen, the group's shutterbug, shared snapshots taken during their excursion. Upon scrutinizing the images, analysts spotted something disconcerting: a blurred figure lurking in the backdrop of three distinct photographs. The silhouette resembled a lanky, shadowy man, perpetually obscured by trees. "We encountered no one else on our journey," Emily insisted. "We'd have remembered." Detective Keller sanctioned a search of the house's interior. The edifice appeared deserted, dust cloaked every surface, furniture lay shattered and strewn. However, in the cellar, officers stumbled upon a disquieting tableau. Personal effects of the absent hikers were arranged meticulously on wooden shelves: watches, rucksacks, cameras, wallets, each tagged with a corresponding name from the exterior wall. Technicians worked meticulously, documenting every article. Beneath ultraviolet light, bloodstains surfaced on the concrete floor, years of smears that someone had attempted to scrub away. Ground-penetrating radar unveiled no bodies interred beneath the house, yet cadaver dogs signaled repeatedly near the back of the premises where the forest thickened. As the inquiry heightened, Detective Keller noted peculiar conduct from Mason Wright. He recounted bizarre incidents, whispers beyond his flat, footprints in fresh snow leading to his threshold but not away, specters observing from the street. The department assigned an officer for his safeguard, yet Mason's paranoia mounted. A breakthrough arose as researchers unearthed land records buried in county archives. The house had been owned by a reclusive huntsman named Victor Blackwood. Neighbors seldom glimpsed him, recounting brief encounters with an eerily towering, skeletal man who shunned discourse. Blackwood vanished without a trace 15 years ago, his disappearance never probed officially. Detective Keller secured a warrant to delve deeper into the surrounding woodlands. The search party uncovered a network of primitive hunting blinds, strategically situated along favored hiking trails. Within one, they found a journal chronicling meticulous observations, depictions of hikers, their paths, gear, and routines. The script mirrored samples from Victor Blackwood's scant existing documents. The entries grew increasingly harrowing with time. Initial pages delineated hunting strategies for animals. Later entries depicted humans as quarry, their customs, vulnerabilities, and methods for their acquisition. The concluding pages held detailed logs of stalking each victim on the wall, including intricate descriptions of how he singled out his prey. The hunt for Blackwood mobilized across multiple jurisdictions. Choppers outfitted with thermal imaging scoured the forest. Tactical units combed every cavern and ravine, yet no trace of the suspect surfaced. Mason Wright ceased answering calls. Officers dispatched to his apartment found the door ajar, the chambers vacant. On his bedroom wall, freshly carved, was a solitary line: "The hunter becomes the hunted." The quest for Mason persisted fruitlessly for weeks. Then, during a secondary sweep of Blackwood's abode, forensic technicians made a ghastly discovery. Concealed behind a false panel in the cellar, they unearthed a small workshop housing woodworking tools, jars of wood preservatives, and a freshly carved wooden piece bearing a new name not yet affixed to the external wall. Detective Keller recognized the name instantly. It belonged to the lead forensic technician who had processed the house during the initial investigation. The technician had called in sick that morning and was unreachable by phone. Authorities established an unbroken surveillance cordon around the house. Camera systems captured every approach. Motion sensors monitored for breaches. The snare was set. 3 nights later, sensors sounded an alarm. Security footage captured a figure emerging from the forest, unbelievably tall and lean, moving with unnatural fluidity. The figure advanced toward the house directly, seemingly unconcerned about the surveillance. as tactical units closed in. The cameras momentarily lost connection. When the system reconnected, the figure had vanished. The dwelling remains under perpetual watch to this day. Mason Wright and the forensic technician were never located. The investigation endures, with fresh resources allocated as akin disappearances surface in other wooded regions. The names on the wall have transcended into legend among law enforcers. Some officers balk at uttering them aloud, others shun the case entirely. And local hikers now circumvent the house, fearing that mentioning it might somehow add their names to that dreadful roster, the names none dare speak. Story 20, The House of Liminal Secrets. She entered through the front door, disturbing the settled dust into a dance in the stagnant air. The abandoned house stood frozen in time, with peeling walls and furniture draped in ghostly sheets. Each room she explored felt like a recurring dream, leading her back to the parlor no matter which door she opened. A strange sensation crept over her as she realized the front door she had entered through had vanished, leaving her trapped in a labyrinth of familiar yet unfamiliar rooms. Detective Sarah Lind found herself at the threshold of the house, now transformed into a crime scene with the discovery of Morgan Pierce's body. Inside, forensic technicians moved like specters through the dimly lit interior, unraveling the mysteries that had long been whispered about in local lore. The house, once known for its unsettling reputation of spinning compasses and unseen watchers, now held secrets darker than anyone could have imagined. The medical examiner's hushed voice revealed the grim truth of Morgan's demise, death by asphyxiation, her peaceful expression and folded hands belying the tragedy of her final moments. No signs of struggle, no clues to unravel the enigma of her death. The stillness in the room seemed to echo with the weight of untold secrets, sending shivers down the spines of even seasoned investigators. As Lind delved into the details of the case, it became clear that Morgan's fascination with the house had led her down a path of no return. Her research into architectural anomalies had drawn her to the Victorian, where she had documented strange occurrences and inexplicable phenomena in her journal. Her quest for understanding had ultimately led her to a fate she could not escape. The investigation uncovered fragments of deleted messages on Morgan's phone, hinting at a mysterious connection she had formed with someone who shared her obsession with the house. Cryptic conversations revealed a deeper bond, a shared belief in the house's hidden truths, and a sense of foreboding that lingered in the shadows. Adam Reeves, an expert in architectural history, emerged as a key figure in the unfolding mystery. His insights into the house's design and purpose shed light on its nefarious secrets, but his alibi for the time of Morgan's death seemed to clear him of any direct involvement. Yet, as the investigation deepened, a chilling family secret came to light, linking a series of deaths in the house to a malevolent force known as the Claiming. Hidden compartments and ancient artifacts hinted at a supernatural influence at play, a deity of liminal spaces that bridged the gap between worlds. The discovery of trace elements matching the rare alkaloid in Morgan's system only deepened the mystery, pointing towards a force beyond human comprehension. The case took a sinister turn with Adam Reeves' untimely death, mirroring Morgan's demise in a haunting symmetry. His final message, a poignant reflection on the house's insidious grip on perception, hinted at a truth too profound to escape. The house, with its shifting doors and hidden chambers, held the key to a reality beyond the confines of mortal understanding. As the investigation remained unresolved, the condemned Victorian stood as a silent sentinel to the enigma that lay within its walls. Rumors of spectral lights and vanishing visitors only added to its mystique, fueling tales of those lost to its seductive illusions. Some believed the house to be a trap for the unwary, while others saw it as a gateway to realms beyond human reckoning. In the end, the truth remained as elusive as the winding corridors of the house, where all doors led back to the beginning, trapping those who dared to seek its secrets. And as the night fell over the abandoned Victorian, whispers of forgotten mysteries echoed in the stillness, beckoning to those who dared to listen. Story 21. The old Polaroid held secrets within its faded edges, a snapshot frozen in time. Faces frozen in smiles, candles flickering innocently, a scene of forgotten joy. Yet within the captured moment, a mystery lurked. The daughter, inheritor of the box of memories, uncovered it. A shape lingered in the background of each photo, a man shrouded in shadow, lurking just beyond the glow of the candles. He was not kin, not a friend. No one recalled his presence, yet there he stood, drawing closer with each passing photo. Sarah Winters unearthed the collection amidst the dusty confines of her mother's attic, a box simply labeled Memories, holding a lifetime of gatherings and laughter. What should have been a comforting find turned into the gateway to a haunting enigma. The first photograph revealed him faintly a specter at the edge during her childhood birthday celebration. A dark figure by the glass door, face obscured, observing. In the subsequent images, he crept closer, moving silently inside the frame, unnoticed by the joyful subjects. Disturbed, Sarah reached out to her father, her voice quivering as she recounted the chilling revelation. "Dad, who is this man in the shadows of our family photos?" A heavy silence followed her query, then a sharp intake of breath. "What man? There should be no one but us," her father's voice faltered. Digital replicas of the Polaroids were sent, prompting her father's alarmed response. "Impossible. We would have seen a stranger among us." Detective Marcus Reed lent his ear as Sarah laid out the eerie photographs on his desk, raindrops tapping against the windows like a whispered secret. The detective's scrutiny moved methodically across the images, his experienced gaze picking up on the unsettling progression. "No recognition of this individual?" he inquired, a hint of intrigue in his tone. "None," Sarah affirmed, arranging the photos to reveal the spectral figure's gradual advance towards the unsuspecting children. The detective, intrigued by the uncanny pattern, suggested the photographer, yet doubt lingered in his words. "My mother captured these moments. She was the only one behind the lens," Sarah clarified. "Copies were made, a case file opened, and an investigation launched. Witnesses were contacted, memories probed. No one remembered the mysterious man. No logical explanation emerged for his presence in the clandestine snapshots, always strategically obscured, as if aware of the camera's gaze." The mystery deepened as Sarah unearthed more photos from different occasions, different years, yet the same enigmatic figure loomed in the background, a silent specter haunting the peripheries of joyous occasions. Enhanced by a digital specialist, hidden details emerged: a scar, a ring, a reflection hinting at a past obscured by darkness. A breakthrough came with the match to dental records, revealing the identity of the shadowy figure as Robert Keller, a vanished maintenance worker once tied to unsolved child abductions. Keller's connection to the rental property where Sarah's birthday had unfolded unraveled a sinister web of disappearances. He had slipped unnoticed through gatherings, wielding keys to homes where children later vanished without a trace. Beneath the foundation of his former residence lay heartbreaking remnants: a hair clip, a toy car, a bracelet, each belonging to a missing child. Sarah sat with the weight of revelations, the past's horrors unearthed through haunting images. The detective's call brought grim closure: a missing child's remains identified near one of the rental properties. The final birthday photo lay before Sarah, a testament to the hidden terror that had trailed her family's celebrations. Behind her youthful self, the shadowy figure lingered, a malevolent presence captured but unseen by those in the frame. The chilling truth connected decades-old mysteries, offering answers tinged with sorrow. Sarah gathered the damning evidence, the photos that had laid bare the obscured truths of the past. The invisible threat, hidden within the folds of time, had finally been exposed to the light of justice. Families found closure in the revelation, though grief lingered in the wake of long-buried secrets. The enigmatic figure, once a mere whisper in family photos, now stood unveiled, a testament to the unseen dangers that haunt the edges of our cherished memories, leaving behind only whispers of their presence. Story 22. She never fancied venturing up there, but when the storm caused a leak in the roof, she had no choice. The attic was a realm of forgotten treasures, veiled in dust and cobwebs. Nestled in the distant corner sat an ancient dollhouse, intricately detailed, its petite furniture meticulously arranged. Yet as she gazed into it, a knot twisted in her stomach. The inhabitants within were not mere dolls. They were diminutive, hand-carved replicas of her kin. Each figure meticulously placed exactly where they had been seated downstairs, except for one. The figure meant to represent her was stationed by the attic door. Rebecca Morgan traced her finger along the dollhouse roof, sensing the groove where the tiny wooden figure stood. The revelation sent a shiver down her spine, unrelated to the chilly draft whispering through the rafters. The dollhouse had no place in this setting. This wasn't her childhood abode, but a rental dwelling the family had recently occupied. The saga commenced with Rebecca's frantic plea to law enforcement. Officers descended upon the suburban abode to encounter a family in turmoil, gathered in their living quarters, adamantly refusing to ascend the stairs. The lead investigator, Detective Sarah Harmon, initially brushed aside their apprehensions as an elaborate hoax, or perhaps the imaginative reveries of a family acclimating to an unfamiliar residence. The precision is what struck me, Detective Harmon would later reminisce in interviews. Each miniature figurine captured a distinctive trait of each family member: the father's receding hairline, the teenager son's hoodie, even the tiny birthmark on the mother's hand. The course of the investigation veered when forensic teams unearthed fingerprints on the dollhouse that bore no resemblance to any family member. More unsettling were the microscopic cameras ensconced in the eyes of every miniature figure, all linked to a sophisticated recording system concealed beneath the dollhouse itself. Scrutiny of the Morgan family's movements in the days prior unveiled an unsettling routine. The positions of the figures in the dollhouse mirrored not only their locations that evening, but precise postures from various days, hinting that someone had been observing them long enough to discern their habits. We came to realize we weren't confronting a mere case of stalking, expounded Detective Harmon. The perpetrator exhibited a level of fixation seldom chronicled in criminal psychology literature. The investigation unearthed a concealed entrance to the basement, camouflaged behind a false panel in the pantry. Inside, investigators stumbled upon a makeshift living area with traces indicating someone had been dwelling there prior to the Morgans' arrival. Discarded food wrappers, water bottles, and a sleeping bag suggested the intruder had been inhabiting the space beneath the family for weeks. What confounded investigators most was the absence of forced entry. Property records divulged that the house had lain vacant for nearly a year before the Morgans took occupancy. The previous proprietors, an elderly couple, both passed away within a short span. Their son oversaw the estate sale and subsequent rental of the property. Interviews with neighbors yielded scant information. Most failed to discern anything amiss, though one elderly lady mentioned sporadically glimpsing lights in the house during its vacancy. I presumed it was the real estate folks showing the property, she disclosed to investigators. Never occurred to me that someone might be inhabiting it without permission. The breakthrough emanated from digital forensics. Upon dissecting the surveillance system linked to the miniature cameras, analysts unearthed that the data was being transmitted to an external server. The IP address guided investigators to a modest apartment across town. Inside, walls adorned with photographs of the Morgan family and prior occupants of the house greeted them. Journal entries meticulously chronicled the daily routines of each family member with unsettling accuracy. The most chilling revelation was a workshop housing scores of partially completed dollhouses, each representing diverse homes in the vicinity. The apartment belonged to Martin Wells, the son of the previous homeowners. Financial records showcased burgeoning debt following his parents' demise. Instead of selling the house outright, he fashioned the covert living space, persisting to dwell there while reaping rental income from unsuspecting tenants. The dollhouse served as his command center, expounded the forensic psychologist assigned to the case. Each figure embodied someone he surveilled. The figure of Rebecca by the attic door wasn't a menace, it was his way of acknowledging her discovery of his surveillance system. During interrogation, Wells remained disconcertingly composed as he expounded his rationale. They were residing in my house, slumbering in my parents' chamber. I needed to ensure they treated it with reverence. When queried about the strategically positioned figures, he simply remarked, "I desired for them to comprehend that I was always observing." The psychological evaluation unveiled a convoluted case of possessive delusion. Wells grappled to emotionally reconcile losing his childhood abode and concocted an intricate system to retain dominion over it. The dollhouse metamorphosed into his medium of possessing both the property and its occupants. The Morgan family never revisited the residence. Rebecca later recollected that the most haunting moment wasn't encountering the dollhouse, but grasping its implications. Someone had been monitoring us all along, quantifying our lives, transforming us into playthings. The genuine terror wasn't the dollhouse itself, it was comprehending that in his mind, we were mere dolls to be arranged and watched. Wells faced multiple charges of stalking, invasion of privacy, illegal surveillance, and unlawful entry. The case spurred a reassessment of real estate disclosure laws concerning deaths on properties and the duty of agents to ensure homes are adequately vacated before new inhabitants assume residence. During sentencing, the judge underscored the extraordinary violation endured by the Morgan family. You didn't solely infiltrate their dwelling, you violated their sense of security and self-governance. You observed their most intimate moments and replicated them for your gratification. What renders the case particularly disconcerting to criminologists is how long Wells could have operated unnoticed had Rebecca not unearthed the dollhouse. Forensic scrutiny of his journals intimated that he had been covertly dwelling within homes for nearly 2 years, migrating from one property to another, crafting dollhouses of each family under scrutiny. The Morgan family eventually relocated to a distant abode, yet Rebecca confessed in victim impact statements that she still inspects closets and crawl spaces routinely. She rid their new residents of all dollhouses and miniatures. "Some days I still sense as though I'm under surveillance," she confided. "I ponder if somewhere, someone is still manipulating a miniature version of me in a dollhouse I haven't unearthed yet." Story 23. The old wooden plank shifted beneath her weight, a subtle movement that caught her attention. Intrigued, she knelt down and traced her fingertips along the edges, sensing a hidden space beneath the seemingly solid floor. With delicate precision, she lifted the boards, unveiling a dark, narrow cavity beneath her new home. In the dim light, she made out a mattress, a chair, and a tattered notebook tucked away in the corner. As her eyes adjusted, she discovered her name scribbled repeatedly on the pages, a haunting echo of her presence in this secret chamber. Detective Morgan Reed stood silently behind Sarah Coleman, observing the mix of fear and unease in her gaze as she peered into the darkness below. It wasn't just about the discovery of a hidden room. It was about the violation of her sanctuary, the intrusion of something sinister into what should have been a fresh beginning. "Please don't disturb anything." Detective Reed's voice was steady, commanding. She clicked on her flashlight, casting light on the walls adorned with surveillance photographs capturing Sarah's every move, a chilling shrine to an obsession that had festered right beneath her feet. Sarah had purchased the quaint cottage from the estate of a reclusive man named Walter Green, who had passed away with no known kin. The property had sat vacant for months before Sarah had taken ownership, unaware of the dark secrets concealed within. "I never met him, the previous owner." Sarah's voice was a whisper. "The neighbors mentioned he kept to himself. I was told that the basement access had been sealed off long ago. The inspection report never hinted at this." Crime scene investigators arrived, their presence marked by the thud of equipment against the creaking floorboards. They meticulously documented the eerie findings, extracting the mattress, chair, and notebook from their clandestine resting place. Forensic analysis revealed Walter Green's fingerprints scattered throughout, a testament to his clandestine obsession. What troubled the investigators most was the timeline they constructed. Walter had been watching Sarah for years, mingling in the same circles, frequenting the same places, yet she had remained oblivious to his presence. "The level of fixation suggests escalation," the department psychologist explained. "The transition from fantasy to reality, the hidden room indicates a more sinister intent." Detective Reed's inquiries took an unexpected turn when she spoke with Walter's former coworker, a jittery man who nervously toyed with his wedding band as he divulged Walter's fixation on Sarah. A fixation that transcended mere infatuation, hinting at darker intentions. A search of Walter's workplace locker unearthed a key that unlocked a storage unit registered under his name. Inside, a chilling replica of Sarah's former life awaited a mirror image of her apartment, meticulously recreated down to the smallest detail, a macabre shrine to his obsession. The investigation unveiled Walter's troubling past, a history of erotomania that had resurfaced after decades of dormancy. His delusions of a destined connection with Sarah had spiraled into a dangerous obsession, a twisted fantasy he sought to make reality. Sarah made the difficult decision to sell the house, haunted by the thought of what might have been if she hadn't discovered the hidden chamber. The close call left her shaken, prompting a relocation and a newfound vigilance in safeguarding her privacy. The case was officially closed after Walter's demise, labeled as stalking with intent to abduct, a grim reminder of the thin line between safety and peril. Sarah's life took a new path, marked by caution and a constant awareness of the shadows that once lurked beneath her. The cottage passed into the hands of a young couple, oblivious to its dark past. The hidden room was sealed, the floorboards replaced, but the echoes of the past lingered, a chilling reminder of the dangers that dwell unseen, of monsters who remain elusive, and of survivors who narrowly escape their fates. Story 24. The motel stood as a relic of forgotten days, a place where transient souls sought temporary respite. Its faded facade hinted at stories untold, secrets buried in the walls. The night was quiet as the weary traveler checked in, greeted by the clerk with a cryptic warning. "Just avoid the last door on the left," he whispered, a hint of unease in his eyes. Intrigue sparked within her, a flame of curiosity flickering in the shadows of her mind. Later, in the hushed hours of the night, she found herself drawn to that forbidden door. The hallway was bathed in a dim, ethereal light, casting long shadows that danced with unseen whispers. The handle of the door felt like ice against her skin, sending shivers down her spine. To the naked eye, it appeared no different from its companions, yet a strange energy pulsed beneath its surface. Pressing her ear against the wood, she heard a faint, rhythmic breath, a presence lingering on the other side. Detective Morgan Reed, a seeker of truth in a world veiled by darkness, entered the room with a heavy heart. The scene before her told a tale of tragedy written in blood and silence. The air was heavy with the scent of metal and sorrow, a primal reminder of life's fragility. A young woman lay still on the floor, her beauty stark against the stark backdrop of violence. Her vacant eyes gazed upwards, capturing the final moments of a life cut short. Reed knelt beside her, a silent guardian of the departed, absorbing the weight of the unspeakable. The forensic technician's voice pierced the silence, a cold recitation of facts in the face of human cruelty. 3 women, 3 lives extinguished in the shadows of anonymity. The puzzle pieces of a killer's twisted design slowly fell into place, revealing a pattern of darkness that defied reason. As the investigation unfolded, Reed delved deeper into the mysteries that shrouded the victim's life. Each clue led her down a winding path of secrets and lies, a labyrinth of deceit waiting to be unraveled. The truth emerged like a specter from the shadows, casting a pall over the facade of normalcy. A man of power and influence, his hands stained with the blood of innocence. Charles Emerson, a wolf in sheep's clothing, his mask slipping to reveal the darkness within. In the courtroom, justice stood tall, a beacon of light in a world tainted by shadows. Emerson's fate sealed in the echoes of a sentence pronounced, his facade crumbling under the weight of his sins. Yet for Reed, the echoes of that fateful night lingered like a haunting melody. The keys to the past locked away, reminders of the doors that should never have been opened. In the stillness of the evidence locker, they whispered of forgotten truths, of lives entwined in a dance of fate and consequence. The door on the left case faded from the headlines, a chapter closed in the annals of crime. But for Reed, the echoes of that night remained, a reminder that some doors once opened can never be closed again. And in the quiet moments between wakefulness and sleep, she found herself haunted by the ghosts of the past, wandering down endless corridors in search of elusive truths. Story 25. The tale began with Michael and Sarah Klein embarking on a journey they never foresaw in the Victorian-era home they purchased. Nestled in its aging walls lay a secret waiting to be unraveled, hidden beneath the facade of quaint charm. As they peeled away layers of time, the wallpaper whispered a cryptic message, a name repeated endlessly, Eleanor Winters. Each stroke of the pen seemed to pulse with a silent plea, a story begging to be told. Intrigued and unnerved, the couple delved deeper into the mystery, their nights consumed by the enigma etched into the very fibers of their home. Who was Eleanor Winters, and why did her name dance across the walls in a desperate waltz of ink? Their quest for answers led them down a winding path of discovery, where the past intertwined with the present in a chilling embrace. A missing persons case from decades past breathed life into the shadows of their reality, casting a haunting light on the woman who had sold them the house. Margaret Cavendish, with her silver-streaked hair and enigmatic gaze, held secrets within the walls that even she may not have fully grasped. The echoes of her past reverberated through time, pulling Michael and Sarah into a realm where truth was stranger than fiction. Their nights turned into a symphony of whispers and rustling papers as they unearthed fragments of a life long forgotten. The walls bore witness to a tragedy that had remained shrouded in silence, a tale of loss and obsession woven into the very fabric of the house. With each revelation, the boundaries between past and present blurred, revealing a truth both unsettling and profound. Eleanor Winters, a specter from the past, found her voice in the echoes of the walls, speaking through the hands of a woman whose fractured mind held the key to a mystery unsolved. The unraveling of the truth led to a revelation that shattered their perceptions, casting a new light on the shadows that had haunted their home. Eleanor's remains unearthed from the earth beneath their feet, a grim reminder of a life cut short by jealousy and madness. In the end, justice arrived, albeit belatedly, as the layers of deception peeled away to reveal the heart of darkness that had resided within their midst. The house that had once promised solace now stood as a monument to a tragedy long buried, its walls bearing witness to a crime that time had almost forgotten. And as Michael and Sarah watched the final pieces fall into place, a sense of closure washed over them, mingling with the echoes of a past that had finally found its voice. The house settled into a quiet slumber, its secrets laid bare, a testament to the enduring power of truth to conquer even the darkest of mysteries. Story 26. In the heart of the neighborhood, there stood a house that had remained untouched by life for what seemed like an eternity. Whispers among the neighbors spoke of its haunting silence, of the young woman who had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a void that even time couldn't fill. Yet fate had a curious way of unfolding, for when the new tenants crossed the threshold, they were met with a peculiar sight. The bedroom, shrouded in a cloak of mystery, greeted them with a door stubbornly locked from within. With a hesitant push and a creak of resistance, they breached the barrier that had stood guard for so long. Inside, the air hung heavy with the weight of neglect, carrying the echo of a forgotten past. Dust danced in the golden rays of sunlight filtering through the curtains, painting a portrait of abandonment. But amidst the stillness, a subtle unease lingered. The bed lay neatly made, untouched by time's cruel hands. The mirror gleamed free of blemish or dust, reflecting a room frozen in time. And there, upon the weathered desk, a solitary candle stood as a sentinel of the past, its wax a cascade of frozen tears, a silent witness to the passage of years. It was the notebook, weathered and worn, that beckoned them closer. Its pages whispered secrets long kept hidden, each stroke of ink a testament to a life interrupted. Detective Morgan, with a gaze as sharp as a hawk's, delved into the script while forensic whispers danced through the room, seeking truths buried in the shadows. Elise Winters, a name etched in the annals of time, stared back from the pages, her voice echoing through the ink-stained passages. A paralegal with a mind like a steel trap, she had vanished into the abyss, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and a room frozen in time. The words, penned with a precision that bespoke a restless mind, told a tale of shadows and whispers, a tale of a watcher in the night, of a car that prowled like a phantom, of pleas for help lost in the void of disbelief. "I know he's watching me tonight," the final entry whispered, a plea for salvation etched in ink. "If something happens, know that it wasn't random." The room held its breath, the walls closing in with a sense of foreboding. The landlord, a specter in the doorway, muttered words of denial, his face a canvas of pale regret. We checked every room, his words faltered, a shield of ignorance crumbling at his feet. That door was never locked. Elise's world had revolved around the polished halls of Harriman and Associates, a bastion of law and deception. Her pursuit of truth had led her down a path fraught with shadows, uncovering secrets that begged to remain buried. Colleagues spoke in hushed tones of her obsession, her dedication bordering on obsession. The room, a silent witness to a life unraveled, yielded scant clues to the puzzle that was Elise. No trace of struggle, no crimson stains to mar the sanctity of the space. Just a snapshot frozen in time, a moment suspended in the dance of eternity. But beneath the veneer of normalcy, a storm brewed. Fingers danced across surfaces, seeking solace in the whispers of the forgotten. And there, hidden in the recesses of the room, lay a key to unlock a truth long concealed. A flash drive, a portal to a realm of shadows and deceit, held within its digital, embraced the sins of the powerful and the damning truths of the meek. Documents spoke of manipulated data, of lives sacrificed on the altar of corporate greed. Elise's voice, a beacon of defiance, echoed through the recordings, a symphony of justice in a world marred by shadows. The courtroom, a stage set for the reckoning of the guilty, bore witness to the unraveling of a tapestry of lies. Harriman, a puppeteer of deception, stood trial for crimes unspeakable, his facade crumbling under the weight of truth. In the quiet of the night, justice tiptoed through the shadows, casting light on the darkness that had long cloaked the truth. Elise's legacy, a room frozen in time, whispered of a soul that refused to be silenced. And as the final echoes of the trial faded into the night, the house stood silent once more, its secrets laid bare for all to see. Locals whispered of a light that flickered in the upper window, a beacon of justice in a world marred by darkness. Elise's room, a sanctuary of truth, stood as a testament to a life cut short but a legacy unbroken. In the dance of shadows and whispers, justice found its voice, echoing through the halls of the forgotten. And in that moment the house breathed a sigh of relief, its secrets finally set free. Story 27, the real estate listing held no mention of a basement. The blueprints remained silent on its existence. Yet as the family peeled back the worn carpet, a hidden door emerged. Its handle, heavy and rusted, required the strength of 3 to pry it open. A rush of stale air, thick with the scent of damp earth, greeted them as they descended the steps into darkness. Expecting storage, they instead found a solitary chair under a swaying light bulb, casting eerie shadows. And on the wall behind, a series of photographs depicting them. The Mercer family had settled into the suburban home amidst winter's early darkness and bare trees standing stark against the cold sky. The aging 2-story structure exuded character and history, or so they had believed. Little did they anticipate the depth of history within those walls and the chilling intersection it would have with their present. Detective Sarah Connors arrived at the scene with her partner, the crime scene unit already cordoning off the area with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's trembling voice had relayed the shocking discovery beneath their living room floor. "We must document everything before anyone else ventures down there," Connors directed, donning latex gloves with practiced ease. Camera flashes pierced the darkness, capturing the basement's secrets. The creaking wooden steps led to a small, concrete-walled space. A lone chair was anchored in the center, under the harsh glow of a bare bulb. Yet it was the array of photographs that seized their attention, 37 images meticulously arranged in a timeline. "These go back almost 4 weeks," noted Connor's partner, scrutinizing the timestamps on the prints. "Look at this one, Mrs. Mercer napping on the couch, Mr. Mercer at the kitchen table, the kids in their rooms." The absence of forced entry, broken windows, or missing items puzzled the investigators. Privacy had been invaded, leaving the family's sense of security shattered. Fingerprints from past homeowners littered the basement, raising more questions. Previous families had stayed briefly before selling at reduced prices, never mentioning a basement. We must interview every former owner, Connors decided, flipping through her notes. The case darkened as they delved into the property's past. Inconsistencies in records, altered blueprints, and redacted reports painted a disturbing picture. The breakthrough came from a contractor who had renovated the house years earlier. Confronted with basement photos, he paled. There was no room there, he insisted, his hands trembling. I gutted that place to the core, no basement, no door, just dirt and concrete. Data extracted from a hidden memory card unveiled hundreds more images of families, past and present, surreptitiously captured. Audio files revealed intimate conversations, recorded without detection. We must tear down every wall, Connors urged, her tone urgent. Behind the photographs, a secret passage led to a monitoring station, a chilling testament to the intruder's meticulous surveillance. The journal found there, penned by the house's builder, Edward Kelvin, chronicled each family's life in detail. His disappearance during construction raised suspicions. The final journal entry forewarned of the next family's arrival. Fingerprint analysis confirmed Kelvin's presence, hidden within the house he had constructed. A manhunt uncovered him in a hidden crawl space, his presence a haunting revelation. Kelvin spoke of the families as mere subjects in his private experiment, detached and clinical. The psychological evaluation diagnosed severe delusions, painting a portrait of a man who believed he owned the house and its inhabitants. The Mercer family never returned, joining the ranks of those who fled, leaving behind possessions for safety elsewhere. Kelvin's trial exposed the elaborate surveillance network embedded in the house's structure. The verdict left him unfazed, lost in his delusions. The property met its end, razed and buried, yet the families carried the weight of unseen eyes and unheard whispers. In quiet moments they glanced at vents and corners, questioning their solitude. Had they ever